Chapter 1982. When Yuan Du recognized Ma Bin, his heart was filled with regret. If he had known that Ma Bin was in the Three-World Island, he would not have come here. Did he think that he had lived too long? Under the control of his mind, he could not use his strength at all. He took a blow from Ma Bin and was blown far away. Fortunately, he took out a magic weapon to protect himself at the critical moment. Otherwise, he would have been injured by this blow. As expected of the Azure Demon King Ma Bin, Yuan Du's heart palpitated as he turned his head to look. He saw that Ma Bin had already engaged in a fierce battle with the Black Cloud. The clash of the sun's mana was unrestrained, causing the four poles to become unstable and turbulent. For a moment, they were actually evenly matched. He-Yun is so strong? Yuan Du was stunned for a moment. He knew that He-Yun's strength was stronger than his, but it was still surprising that he could fight Ma Bin so well. But soon he realized the reason. Although Ma Bin's momentum was incomparably powerful, and every move contained great power, it always gave people a feeling that it was not smooth enough. After all, he was a sun, so he naturally had a good eyesight. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and he understood that Ma Bin was injured. That was why He-Yun could fight him as an equal. No matter when Ma Bin was injured, and who was the cause of his injury, it was good news for his side. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take down that kid. He-Yun's exasperated voice rang out. Ever since Zi Xian suffered a huge loss because of Yuan Du's instigation, He-Yun knew that this guy was unreliable, but he never thought that this guy would be unreliable to this extent. The famous Azure Demon King Ma Bin was hiding in the Three-World Island, and Yuan Du, as the Sunbeam Guardian of the 10,000 Elephant Sea, didn't know about it at all. Not only that, but Yuan Du was still in a daze while he was fighting Ma Bin. At this time, shouldn't he take the opportunity to take down Lu Ye as a bargaining chip? Ma Bin obviously jumped out because of Lu Ye and the Three-World Island. At this time, as long as he took down Ma Bin would not attack him. But he had to admit that this Azure Demon King was really strong. If Yuan Du could sense that Ma Bin was injured, how could He-Yun, who was fighting him head-on, not be able to sense it? Even so, he was only evenly matched with his opponent. If he was at his peak, how could he be a match for him? As soon as he shouted, Yuan Du immediately moved. At the edge of the cliff, Lu Yi couldn't help but sigh when he saw Yuan Du pouncing towards him again, and his face was filled with helplessness and emotion. This time, his fate was really full of misfortune. As long as he entered the 10,000 Elephant Sea, He-Yun and Yuan Du wouldn't be able to catch him no matter how powerful they were. However, his plans could not keep up with the changes. He did not expect that at this critical moment, Ma Bin would actually charge out of the door. This senior from the 9 provinces treated him well. When he sensed his presence in the Azura domain, he immediately turned back to face the enemy. He fought 1 against 4, and in the end, his Dao foundation was damaged rather than implicate him. Today, seeing that he was in trouble, he even disregarded his injuries to face the enemy. From Ma Bin's point of view, what he did was right. Lu Yi was forced to jump into the sea. How could he just stand by and watch? Naturally, he would go out and support the younger generation. But he had disrupted Lu Ye's plan. Lu Yi could only blame Yuan Du and He-Yun for coming here so abruptly. Lu Yi had only made arrangements for the cultivators on the island, and had never thought of notifying Ma Bin in advance. By a freak combination of factors, the current situation had occurred. At this moment, Yuan Du was charging towards Lu Yi, but Lu Yi didn't panic at all, because he felt a familiar aura from the door. When he turned his head to look, he saw 2 figures brazenly charging out from that direction, joining forces to meet Yuan Du's attack. Yuan Du turned his head in a daze and saw that it was 2 beautiful women. The aura surging around them was impossible to ignore. How come there were 2 more Rikhas? Where did these 2 come from? He had no idea that the Three-World Island was hiding so much power. A few years ago, through the use of soul-searching technique on the cultivators of the Three-World Island, Yuan Du learned many secrets that the island didn't think it knew, but only now did he realize that what he knew was only the tip of the iceberg. The Three-World Island was hiding a lot. With 2 Rikhas joining forces to attack, Yuan Du didn't dare to be careless, but when he took a closer look, these 2 beautiful women looked a little familiar. He held a grudge against Lu Yi and the Three-World Island, so he naturally paid more attention to the island, so he quickly recognized the two women as the two former island masters of the Three-World Island. A few years ago, they were both at the late stage of Yuyao. One was Luan Xiaoa from the Jade Conch boundary, and the other was Yen Miao from the Mermaid clan. These two had followed Ma Bin back to the Three-World Island, and when they saw Yuan Du about to attack Lu Yi, they naturally wouldn't sit back and watch. Just two new rikhas. Yuan Du was furious. He couldn't afford to offend Ma Bin, but he couldn't afford to offend two new rikhas who hadn't even been in the Jade Conch boundary for a few years. Did they really think he'd wasted his years of cultivation? His figure flickered, and he summoned a magic treasure to protect himself, and immediately engaged the two women in a fierce battle. Countless onlookers outside the Three-World Island were stunned. In recent years, the Wanxiang Sea had indeed been lively, especially when it had to do with the Three-World Island. Whether it was conquering Baiyu or defeating Zixin, the battles were extraordinarily fierce and exciting. But the cultivators had never thought that there would be an even more exciting scene to watch. Yuan Du and the Black Cloud Venerable had joined forces to attack the Three-World Island. They had thought that the Three-World Island was powerless to resist and could only be slaughtered. But now, the Azure Demon King, Ma Bin, and the Black Cloud Venerable were locked in a fierce battle. Now, two new rikhas had blocked Yuan Du and were fighting. Wasn't it said that only the rikhas could stay on the Wanxiang Sea for a long time? 3 new rikhas had popped out of the Three-World Island in such a short time. This was simply ridiculous. The key was that Yuan Du, the island master, didn't seem to know anything about this before. The Yu Yao cultivators who had been recruited by Yuan Du to come with him all had solemn expressions. They secretly rejoiced that the Black Cloud Venerable had come with them. Otherwise, if Yuan Du had led them to attack the Three-World Island alone, they would have been wiped out. In the crowd, Giant Blade Island's Zhao Yunqi trembled. He felt that he couldn't stay in this place for long. Taking advantage of Yuan Du's distraction, he quietly left the crowd and quickly left. Even if Yuan Du would blame him later, he couldn't care too much. At the edge of the cliff, Lu Yi calmly watched. Things had developed to this point and had deviated from his original plan. After today, it would be difficult for the Three-World Island to gain a foothold in the Wanxiang Sea. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that they had harbored Ma Bin was absolutely intolerable in the Wanxiang Galaxy. But it didn't matter too much. The Three-World Island had made a lot of money over the years. In the short term, the Three-World Island's cultivators would have no problem cultivating. Moreover, he had always been worried that it wouldn't be long before he became a rikhas. At that time, he definitely wouldn't be able to stay on the Three-World Island. Most of the Three-World Island's fame came from his name. If he didn't stay on the island, it would be difficult for the Three-World Island's cultivators to protect such a delicious piece of meat. Taking advantage of this opportunity to retreat at the top of the tide was not necessarily a bad choice. Thinking of this, Lu Ye's mood became more relaxed. At this time, under the Wanxiang Sea, in the merfolk's territory, a sealed piece of amber suddenly emitted a cracking sound. Inside the amber, Hua Xi's eyes, which had been closed for many years, slowly opened. A faint golden light flashed through them. Upon closer inspection, the golden light was in the shape of an ancient coin. The corners of her lips curled up slightly as she murmured softly, "The heartless man is in trouble." All these years, she seemed to have been in a deep slumber, but in reality, she hadn't lost her perception of the outside world. Hence, she was aware of everything that happened around her. But because her pet beast had mutated after swallowing that strange ancient coin, even she, its master, was in a strange state. In this state, coupled with the fact that Lu Yi had placed her in a suitable environment, both her and her pet beast's cultivation improved at a terrifying rate. If this state didn't stop, it would continue. But today, the Conch Palace was too lively. Not only did it alarm Ma Bin, who was recuperating, but it also alarmed Hua Xi, who had been sealed all this time. She had planned to unseal herself after she became a rikhas, but since Lu Yi was in trouble, she had no choice but to do it now. When she was sealed, Lu Yi would often visit her and ramble on beside her. She had heard a lot of infuriating things. The heartless man thought that she couldn't sense him, so he told her a lot of things, but he didn't know that she could hear him. Kacha. The amber shattered and Hua Si stepped out of it. Her temperament had changed drastically compared to before. Her appearance was even more beautiful, and even her black hair was slightly rippling with a strange golden light. A strange sound came out. Hua Si lowered her head and looked at the golden toad in her arms. This guy used to be bumpy and ugly, but now it had been reborn with its master. It had the blood of a Pishio, so it was no longer as ugly as it used to be. Its body was covered in a golden light, and there were also marks in the shape of golden coins on its body. It looked noble and extraordinary. Yes, you also think that he should be taught a lesson. Hua Si nodded slightly. Gua. After a while, in front of the Conch Palace's door, Shui Yuan looked at Hua Si in surprise. Junior sister, you're awake? In the entire three-world island, Shui Yuan was the closest to Hua Si. Both of them were from the Jade Blood sect and were senior sisters and junior sisters. They were also medical cultivators. It could be said that Shui Yuan was both Hua Si's senior sister and Hua Si's master. She had taught her many things. In response to Shui Yuan's question, Hua Si merely glanced at her and blinked silently. Then she expressionlessly walked towards the door that was about to disappear. Shui Yuan couldn't help but be stunned. For some reason, Hua Si's gaze was extremely strange. End of chapter. Chapter 1983. Senior Sister Hua Si. A cultivator who knew Hua Si called out softly. Hua Si turned her head and looked over indifferently. When their eyes met, the cultivator couldn't help but be stunned on the spot. For some inexplicable reason, a feeling of inferiority arose in his heart. He was not the only one who felt this way. Most of the cultivators present felt the same way. It was as if Hua Si was a high and mighty goddess, and they were the filthy insects in the mud. Just looking at her was blasphemy. Many people quickly lowered their heads. When they came back to their senses, Hua Si had disappeared. The portal also disappeared completely. Oh no! Only then did someone realize, it's not safe on the island now. Hua Si. Everyone was surprised by Hua Si's change. No one expected her to return to the three-world island at this time. It would not have mattered if it was before, but the sunshine battle had broken out there. Yuan Du, He Yun, Ma Bin, Luan Xiao, and Yen Miao were fighting. How could Hua Si end well if she rushed in like this? Where's Ya? Shui Yuan discovered another thing that frightened her. Yaya, who had always been by her side, had disappeared without her noticing. The two sunshine battle groups on the three-world island were locked in a fierce battle. Ma Bin and He Yun were evenly matched, but Ma Bin could not maintain this state for long. His Dao foundation had not recovered. It was not the right time to fight fiercely. The longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Luan Xiao and Yen Miao were fighting Yuan Du together. They were not in a good situation. Although they were fighting 1 against 2, they had just reached the sunshine level not long ago. Yuan Du had reached the sunshine level many years ago. In terms of cultivation, he was definitely stronger. If that was all, it would not be a big deal. The key was that there were other suns on the vast Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi looked in the direction of the Wanxiang Island. Even from far away, he could clearly feel that there were several powerful auras approaching. It would not take long for them to reach the three-world island. They were the other 4 guardians of the Wanxiang Sea. With such a big change happening on the three-world island, even the Azure Demon King Ma Bin appeared. How could they just stand by and watch? Ma Bin's side had a grudge with the Wanxiang Galaxy, so no matter which side they stood on, the 4 of them had to come and help Yuan Du. Lu Yi knew that something was wrong. He had to leave before the 4 Rizhao arrived. Otherwise, he would never be able to leave. He wouldn't be in any danger. At worst, he would just have to jump into the sea. However, Ma Bin, Luan Xiao, and Smoky Miao had to leave quickly. If they left now, they still had a chance to escape. The longer they delayed, the greater the risk. How did the situation develop to this point? Lu Ye's face was full of helplessness. He clenched his fist lightly. In his heart, he even had the thought of breaking through to sunshine right now. He had already accumulated enough foundation and could break through to the Sunshine Realm at any time. The only reason he was delaying it was to polish his spiritual source. If he was Rizhao, he wouldn't be standing here and watching. In the end, he suppressed the impulse in his heart. In order to polish his art source, he had put in a lot of effort. If he gave up now, then all his previous efforts would have been in vain. Lu Ye's divine sense surged, and just as he was about to send a message to Ma Bin and the others to retreat, Lu Yi suddenly caught a glimpse of a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. Lu Yi turned to look, and the corner of his eye twitched. The small figure skipped over to Lu Yi and looked up at him. Her cute face was full of mischief. "Why did you run over here?" Lu Yi hurriedly bent down and hugged Yaya. But it didn't matter. If he only had Yaya, he could still escape by jumping into the sea. But for some reason, he felt that Yaya was a little different today. His neck tightened as Yaya stretched out her hands and hugged him. Her little head was pressed against his chest as she sniffed deeply, as if she wanted to remember Lu Ye's scent in her heart. Then her soft voice sounded, "Daddy, it's time to say goodbye." Lu Yi was stunned. Why? A small hand suddenly pressed on his lips, stopping him from speaking. Yaya raised her head and smiled brightly at him. A strange light flashed in her eyes, and a wicked expression appeared on her small face. "Also, don't let me catch you and beat you to death in the future." Many thoughts flashed through Lu Ye's mind. Before he could say anything, Yaya had jumped out of his arms and rushed toward the nearest battle. That was the battlefield where Yuan Du, Wan Xiaoa, and Yen Miao were. His small figure was so inconspicuous, but at this moment, countless pairs of eyes were focused on him. The main reason was that this scene was too sudden. Even Yu Yao could not casually interfere in such a battle of sunshine, but now, a child had suddenly appeared. Yuan Du also noticed Yaya's approach. He had always known of Yaya's existence. After all, he had been paying attention to the three-world island. But he didn't know about Yaya's background. He only thought that she was a junior brought over by Lu Yi from the 9 states. At this moment, seeing Yaya rushing toward him, Yuan Du was furious. Today was supposed to be a good day for him to take down Lu Yi and seize the three-world island. But in the end, his foolproof plan had made one mistake after another. As a result, not only did he fail to take down Lu Yi, but he was also besieged by 2 women. A child who came out of nowhere dared to offend him. "Get lost!" Yuan Du waved his sleeves, and when the surging supernatural power rolled out, it wrapped Yaya in an instant. Yaya left quickly and came back quickly. Her small figure flew backward like a kite with a broken string. Lu Ye's heart tightened. Although he knew that Yaya had the power of sunshine and that such a blow couldn't do anything to her, he still couldn't help but worry. Yaya's small face suddenly showed a look of anger, and then she rushed toward Yuan Du again. But this time, halfway through, she suddenly raised her 2 lotus root-like white arms and touched them in the middle. "Break!" Yaya's voice rang out. The jade bracelets on her wrists suddenly shattered, turning into spots of fluorescent light that enveloped her. In the light, the small figure twisted and changed rapidly. By the time Yaya rushed out of the light, her whole person had changed greatly. The little girl, who looked to be only 7 or 8 years old, was now tall and slim. Her face was cold and beautiful, and her black hair was like a waterfall. Every strand of hair was dancing and twisting like a living thing. Her clothes had also changed into a rainbow-colored dress, which was dazzling. She was obviously a heavenly beauty, but her aura was as fierce as an ancient ferocious beast, intimidating everyone. The sudden change stunned everyone who saw this scene. Even Ma Bin and He Yun, who were fighting in the distance, couldn't help but turn their heads to look. Another sunshine. The spectating cultivators were numb. What kind of dragon's pool and tiger's den was this three-world island? 3 sunshine were not enough, but there was a 4th one, and in such an unimaginable way. On second thought, there were 4 sunshine cultivators hiding in the three-world island. What were they trying to do? The Wanxiang Sea would never allow an outsider sunshine to stay for too long on the edge of the cliff in the three-world island. Lu Yi frowned at Yaya's change. Although he didn't understand why Yaya said those words before, he could feel one thing: he was about to lose Yaya. This cheap daughter he picked up from the Mist Dragon had brought him a lot of warmth, and she had helped him out of dangers several times. But after all, Yaya had a background. When he picked her up, her divine soul was injured and she was unconscious, causing her memory to be damaged. But the great sunshine was acting like a child. After so many years, Lu Yi could vaguely feel that Yaya was slowly recovering. And her 2 jade bracelets, which belonged to her, were also found in the Mist Dragon. The bracelets were broken, and Yaya returned to her original appearance. In this way, the 2 jade bracelets should be a kind of seal, which sealed Yaya's cultivation and memory. Now that the bracelets were broken, she had regained everything. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of method this was, but at this moment he felt a little suffocated. While he was thinking, Yaya had brazenly charged into the battle group where Yuan Du was. Her surging spiritual power surged and her figure intertwined. Even if Lu Yi used his full eyesight, he couldn't see the specific situation of the battle clearly. He only heard a muffled groan, and then a figure fell from the sky into the Wanxiang Sea like a meteorite. Seawater splashed everywhere. There were cries of surprise all around. The 10,000 Elephant Sea's water was a terrifying representation. Although everyone knew that the 10,000 Elephant Sea's water was the condensation of starry sky spirit energy, it was too corrosive. It was so corrosive that even Rizhao didn't dare to enter it at will. As for Rizhao, once he fell into the sea, he would definitely die. Therefore, when cultivators fought on the Wanxiang Sea, the first thing they had to pay attention to was not to be knocked into the sea by the enemy. This was something that everyone tried to avoid. But no one expected that Sunshine couldn't avoid something that even the Yu Yao constellation tried to avoid. Everyone saw clearly that the one who fell into the sea was not someone else, but Yuan Du, who had come aggressively before. In any case, he was still a veteran Rikashi. Just now, he had the upper hand in a 1-on-2 fight. Now, the third Rikashi had joined the battle. In just a few breaths, he had been beaten into the sea. One could imagine how strong this third Rikashi was. In the battle group, Luan Xiao and Yen Miao were a little dumbfounded, staring blankly at the beautiful woman standing beside them. Yaya! Luan Xiao called softly. On the woman's facial features, traces of Yaya's appearance could be vaguely seen, as if Yaya had grown up. She also clearly saw how the woman changed from Yaya to this appearance. But the current situation was still somewhat beyond her understanding. End of chapter. Chapter 1984. Luan Xiao knew that Yaya was Rizhao, but she never knew that Yaya was so powerful after recovering. The onlookers couldn't see the battle clearly, but how could she and Yen Miao not know? The power that Yaya burst out at that moment was not something that new Rizhao like her and Yen Miao could compare with. Not to mention that Yuan Du was already restrained by the two of them. Even if it was a 1-on-1 fight, Luan Xiao estimated that Yuan Du could not last more than 10 breaths under Yaya's hands, and it was inevitable that he would be beaten into the sea. In the past, when Yaya was playing around in the three-world island, Luan Xiao also took care of her. Because Lu Yi was not in the three-world island all year round, and Xueyuan was always in charge of the alchemy room, she did not pay much attention to Yaya. On the contrary, she, the former island master, spent a lot of time with Yaya. Luan Xiao had always liked this little girl, and once thought that if she could find someone she liked, she might be able to give birth to such a child. In the past, Yaya was relatively close to her. But at this moment, Luan Xiao felt that there was a dangerous aura around Yaya, which made her look sluggish. Yaya turned her head again and looked in the direction of Lu Yi. Their eyes met, and she snorted with a cold look. Her divine thoughts surged, and she transmitted a message. Live well before I catch you, don't die. Then she quickly swept away, looking like she was in a hurry. Lu Yi frowned. In just a dozen breaths, Yaya had changed into a completely different person. Before the seal was lifted, she deliberately ran over to hug her, looking very reluctant. But after the seal was lifted, Lu Yi felt that there was hostility in Yaya's eyes. It was a kind of shame and anger from the past that she could not bear to look back on. Then she remembered what Yaya said before. Was she really going to catch her and beat her to death? She sighed deeply. Her worries from a long time ago had come true. Yaya, who had recovered her Rizhao body, really cared about all the things that happened before. When she was still a child, she was affected by that state, and her mind was innocent. But once she recovered, it was completely different. Thinking about it, it was hard for anyone to accept what happened to Yaya. That was a stain in life, and since it was a stain, it naturally had to be erased. But on second thought, if Yaya really cared about this stain, then she should not have gone to deal with Yuan-Du after the seal was lifted. Instead, she should have gone to deal with him first. But she still went to deal with Yuan-Du. Looking at it this way, Yaya was also tough on the mouth but soft on the heart, or it could be said that there were contradictions in her heart. However, there was one thing that puzzled Lu Yi. Why was Yaya running so fast? She seemed to be hiding from something. Just as he was thinking about this, an extremely strong energy fluctuation suddenly emerged in midair, followed by a bright pattern that quickly spread out and outlined, turning into an extremely complex pattern. Lu Yi frowned and looked at it with rapt attention. With a glance, he could see that there were traces of void spirit runes in the complicated pattern. This is a teleportation formation built with void spirit runes as the foundation? It was very different from the teleportation formation that he had set up himself, but Lu Yi could feel that this teleportation formation was very exquisite. Who set this up? And he did not know if it was a coincidence or not, but the location where this teleportation formation appeared was exactly where Yaya had revealed her original appearance after the seal was lifted, and there were still remnants of Yaya's aura there. This teleportation formation appeared very abruptly and was so large and conspicuous that Lu Yi saw it, and so did the others. For a moment, they were surprised and thought that it was a trick set up by the three-world island. The next moment, a fleshless skeletal hand suddenly reached out from the teleportation formation. Although it was only a large hand, it was filled with a monstrous aura that caused the space to distort. Luan Xiao and Yen Miao, who were near the teleportation formation, changed their expressions and hurriedly dodged. The skeletal hand twisted and struggled, and the teleportation formation surged. Behind the hand, a figure was about to cross the teleportation formation. Roar! A roar came out, and the teleportation formation suddenly expanded. Under the distortion of the void, a huge figure appeared out of thin air above the 10,000 elephant sea. It was a skeleton without any flesh on its body, and only 2 balls of dark flames burned in its eyes. The strong aura on its body had obviously reached the level of Rizhao, and it was no ordinary Rizhao. This was a Bone Clan cultivator. Another Rizhao. The surrounding cultivators were dumbfounded. Normally, Rizhao was rarely seen, but today, Rizhao cultivators appeared one after another as if they were free. Was this also the hidden Rizhao of the three-world island? Many people were puzzled. However, at this moment, another figure appeared from the teleportation formation right after Rizhao of the Bone Clan. This guy was not from the Bone Clan, but looked like a demon. He had 2 pitch-black curved horns on his head and wore a black robe. It was Rizhao again. Moreover, whether it was the Bone Clan or this demon, their auras were not inferior to Ma Bin and He Yun, who were fighting nearby. This undoubtedly meant that they were at the same level as He Yun. As soon as this demon appeared, he cursed, "Ultra-long-distance teleportation is really an unbearable experience." There were many wounds on his face and exposed skin, obviously caused by forceful teleportation. However, he was strong, and these wounds disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. After scanning with his divine sense, this demon raised his eyebrows. "This is the Wanxiang Sea?" He looked around and nodded slightly. "How lively." Then he smiled as if there was no one around. "Don't be nervous, we're just passing by. You can continue." After that, he grabbed something to the side as if he had caught something. He put it to the tip of his nose and sniffed it, murmuring, "Let me see where our saintess escaped to." He closed and opened his eyes, and immediately looked in the direction Yaya escaped. "Over there." Rizhao of the Bone Clan roared and turned into a ray of light and flew forward. Rizhao of the Demon Clan followed closely behind, and the 2 figures disappeared in an instant. Lu Yi looked at this scene quietly, and his expression changed. He finally knew why Yaya left in a hurry. She was obviously avoiding the 2 Rizhao who suddenly appeared. Saintess? Lu Yi recalled what the demon clan had said, and doubts arose in his heart. What kind of force did Yaya come from? If she was the saintess of this force, why was she avoiding Rizhao? The only thing Lu Yi could determine was that this force must be very strong, because this kind of ultra-long distance teleportation was not something that anyone could perform. It must have the support of an entire force behind it. As for why this teleportation array appeared here, Lu Yi vaguely guessed that it had something to do with Yaya's unsealing. Before she was unsealed, this powerful force could not detect her existence at all, but today she was forced to be unsealed, and her whereabouts were exposed, so the other party quickly used the remnants of her aura as the source to build an ultra-long distance teleportation array. If Yaya had not run fast, she would have encountered these two strange Rizhao, and it would be hard to say whether she would be lucky or not. Looking at it this way, Yaya could have recovered her strength a long time ago, but she had not done so. Instead, she maintained the state of a child to survive on the island of the Three Realms, because it was better to hide. Until today, when she sensed danger on his side, she unsealed herself and helped him. But that was all she could do. After dealing with Yuan Du, she would immediately escape. With this thought in mind, Lu Yi knew that it was time to retreat. Now the situation in the Wanxiang Sea was chaotic, and the ultra-long distance teleportation array still existed. Who knew if there were more experts coming? This was a place of trouble, and he could not stay for long. Wan Xiao and Yen Miao did not have to worry too much. Yen Miao had a golden conch, which could slightly isolate the water of the Wanxiang Sea. In the past, Lu Yi and Yen Miao had the experience of swimming all the way out of the Wanxiang Sea from the mermaid territory. At that time, thanks to the isolation of the golden conch, she could jump into the sea with Wan Xiao to escape. Then only Ma Bin's side was left, which was not difficult. He Yun was on par with him, and if Ma Bin insisted on jumping into the sea, He Yun could not stop him. When the time came, he would pick up Ma Bin under the sea and meet up with Yen Miao, and they could rush back to the mermaid territory from the sea. As for Ma Bin being eroded by the water of the Wanxiang Sea, he could help to solve it. Just as Lu Yi was planning to do so, something strange happened again. With a splash, a figure jumped out from under the Wanxiang Sea. It was Yuan Du, who had been knocked down into the Wanxiang Sea before. At this moment, his body was shrouded in a black fog, as if he was poisoned. His originally clear spiritual power had become turbid, and his momentum had plummeted. His eyes were filled with bitter resentment, and after appearing, he ignored everyone else and rushed towards Lu Ye's position. He hated Lu Yi to the core. His original plan was going well, but now he was being suppressed everywhere. When he was knocked down into the Wanxiang Sea, although he survived with his powerful cultivation, in that short period of time, he was eroded by the water of the Wanxiang Sea. He would not be able to resolve this level of erosion in his lifetime. In other words, from now on, not only would he have no room to improve, he would not even be able to maintain his original cultivation. As time passed, he might even fall to the sunshine level. So now he only had one thought, and that was to kill Lu Yi to vent the hatred in his heart. If it were not for Lu Yi, he would not have lost face back then. If it were not for Lu Yi, he would not have been targeting the Three-World Island, and he would not have suffered today. All of this was because of Lu Yi of the Three-World Island. Yuan Du rushed over, but Lu Yi did not move. He just looked at him expressionlessly. Compared to before, Yuan Du's spiritual power was extremely turbid, and the power of his attacks was not even 30% of before. Lu Yi even had a feeling that he could barely deal with Yuan Du in this state. However, he did not need to do it himself. Wan Xiao and Yen Miao had already joined forces to kill him. The two women arrived first, and as their spiritual power surged, Yuan Du's body was suddenly covered in blood. He was knocked down somewhere on the Three-World Island, gasping for breath. He lay on the ground in a sorry state, with a big hole in his chest and the top of his head. If it were not for Rizhao's powerful vitality, he would have died from such injuries. Chapter 1985. Yuan Du was not dead, but he had fallen into the 10,000 Elephant Sea and was contaminated by its water. Now that he was seriously injured, he was not far from death. Unless he was treated in time, there was still a chance for him to survive. Almost at the same time as Yuan Du was injured, A sorrowful and angry shout suddenly rang out, "Senior brother Yuan Du!" Immediately after, several Rizhao's auras descended on the three-world island. They were the other 4 Rizhao guardians who had rushed over after sensing that something was wrong. It would take some time to get here from the 10,000 Elephant Island, but they still managed to arrive in time. The 4 of them had obviously discussed this beforehand. When they arrived at the battlefield, one of them immediately joined the battle between Ma Bin and He Yun. The 10,000 Elephants Sea hated Ma Bin to the bone. Now that there was a rare opportunity to kill him, they naturally did not want to miss it. Originally, Ma Bin and He Yun were evenly matched in their fight. Any interference from outside could break the balance. Of the remaining 3, one rushed towards Yuan Du, undoubtedly to check on his condition, while the other 2 rushed towards Lu Yi. They were well aware of the cause and effect. Today's incident was caused by Yuan Du's selfishness. He had joined forces with He Yun to attack the three-world island. At first, they did not take it too seriously. As long as Yuan Du was dealt with quickly, the situation would be clean and there would not be too much trouble. The only trouble they would have to face was Jiao Yan's questioning. But since Yuan Du had decided to do this, he must have been prepared. However, the situation had developed beyond everyone's expectations. A mere three-world island had hidden so many Rizhao and even harbored the Azure Demon King Ma Bin. It was obvious how ambitious they were. At first, they felt that the three-world island was a little innocent and pitiful, being targeted by Yuan Du, but now, they were incomparably glad. If Yuan Du had not targeted them, they would not have discovered the true face of the three-world island. Who knew when the problems of the three-world island would suddenly erupt? At that time, the commotion would be even greater than today's. Although the current situation was chaotic, they only needed to take down Lu Yi and deal with Ma Bin. 2 Rizhao guardians attacking one Yu Yao showed their determination to quickly take down Lu Yi. "Junior brother, run!" Wan Xiao shouted. Together with Yen Miao, they met the 2 Rizhao guardians head-on. But how could the 2 girls be a match for them? They were at a disadvantage as soon as they exchanged blows. The situation was precarious. Lu Ye's expression. There was no end to this. He had tried several times to order Rizhao to evacuate, but he was interrupted by various accidents. At this point, whether it was Ma Bin, Luan Xiao, or Yen Miao, it was not easy for them to evacuate. Their side no longer had any combat power that they could bring out. On the other hand, there was still Rizhao from Wanxiangxi who did not participate in the battle. He was currently checking on Yuan Du's injuries. Putting aside the fact that Luan Xiao and Misty Smoke were no match for the enemy, Ma Bin's condition had just improved. If the battle went on for too long, it would be difficult for him to hold on. At that time, even Ma Bin would be defeated. Sunshine. Sure enough, he still needed to be promoted to Sunshine to have the ability to participate in such a battle. He couldn't just stand here and watch helplessly. Lu Yi gently clenched his fist, and his magic power began to surge. Although it was regretful, there were many things in life that did not go according to one's wishes. Only by overcoming the current crisis would one have the qualifications to talk about the future. Just as he was about to cut off all means of retreat and advance to Rizhao, a panicked aura suddenly enveloped him, followed by a powerful divine sense attack. Lu Yi only felt a buzzing in his head. If it were not for the 7-colored divine lotus stabilizing his divine soul, his mind would have been injured. Raising his head, he saw that one of the 2 sunshine guards that Luan Xiao and Yen Miao had joined hands with was already charging towards him. Lu Yi recognized this person. It seemed to be Gu Shi from the Tianyan realm. It was this person who had just used his soul power to attack him. After all, Luan Xiao and Misty Smoke's strength was much lower. The 2 women wanted to join forces to stop the other 2, but it was impossible. In just a few breaths of time, Gu Shi escaped, leaving the other person to fight the 2 of them alone. Even so, the 2 women had to fight with all their strength. "Malignant tumor, I can't let you live." Gu Shi looked at Lu Yi, his face full of murderous intent. It was obvious that he wanted to kill him. Yuan Du and Lu Yi had a grudge against each other, so he targeted Lu Yi and the three-world island. Gu Shi simply didn't like Lu Yi and the three-world island. Now that he had the chance, he naturally wouldn't show mercy. Now that Gu Shi was attacking, how could Lu Yi stay where he was? He turned around to escape. He could enter the sea at any time, so he had long been prepared. But at this moment, somewhere in the three-world island, a dazzling golden light suddenly shot out. The golden light was extremely fast, and there was no warning before it was shot out. Not only did Lu Yi not notice it, but even Rizhao like Gu Shi didn't react at all. The golden light hit Gu Shi's body. Lu Ye's figure paused. He didn't expect that at this time, there would still be someone on the three-world island who dared to attack Gu Shi. Who was it? However, when he saw Gu Shi's state clearly, he couldn't help but be stunned. Because at this moment, a layer of golden light had appeared on Gu Shi's body for some unknown reason. The golden light was densely packed with the imprints of ancient coins. The shape and appearance of these coins looked a little familiar. At the same time, the anger and murderous intent on Gu Shi's face quickly disappeared, replaced by astonishment and panic. He maintained his flying posture, but his entire body was shrouded in a layer of golden light. This golden light had a terrifying binding power, rendering him immobile. He couldn't even channel the arcane energy in his body. Then, under Lu Ye's confused gaze, Gu Shi fell several dozen feet in front of him. Due to inertia, he slowly came to a stop a short distance away. Even after falling to the ground, Gu Shi still maintained his flying posture, looking extremely comical. Lu Yi abruptly turned his head and saw a familiar figure standing at the pill room's location, quietly watching him. Wuxia. Lu Ye's eyes widened. Why was she here? And when did she come back? He didn't notice at all. Moreover, he had just gone to the sea to visit her a few days ago. At that time, she showed no signs of waking up, so he didn't expect her to come back now. At this moment, Wuxia was standing there quietly, holding a golden-toed pet beast in her arms. Under the hazy golden halo, her expression was serene, but there was an awe-inspiring and sacred feeling about her. Needless to say, the golden light that hit Gu Shi just now must have come from her means. And the source of this means came from that strange ancient coin. Back then, Lu Yi had even used that ancient coin to imprison a sunshine-level star beast under the sea. It was obvious how powerful the ancient coin was. Lu Yi even suspected that it might be a starry sky treasure. Otherwise, it couldn't possibly have such ridiculous power. Back then, when he set off for the Yin-Yang Great Millstone, he gave the ancient coin to Wuxia for safekeeping. It could be considered as giving her a way to protect herself on the Thousand Crescent Sea. At the same time, it was also a trump card for Three-World Island. However, one day, when Wuxia was playing with the ancient coin, she was swallowed by her pet beast. Since then, the pet beast and its owner, Wuxia, had been sealed in a piece of amber. Lu Yi didn't know what happened to cause this, but after all these years, Wuxia's vitality still remained, and her strength seemed to be growing stronger all the time. When she reappeared today, Lu Yi sensed from afar that Wuxia's aura was so vigorous that it was not inferior to his own. This was outrageous. He was now a late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator, but Wuxia's aura was not inferior to his. Didn't that mean she also had the same cultivation level? The reason his cultivation level could rise so quickly was because of the innate skill tree. As for Wuxia, the ancient coin could also devour the Thousand Crescent Sea's water. She and her pet beast were sealed in the amber and placed under the sea by Lu Yi. All these years, she had been constantly devouring the Thousand Crescent Sea's water, so it wasn't strange for her to grow so much. The only thing that puzzled Lu Yi was that Wuxia's gaze was a little wooden, even a little arrogant. But with the current situation, he didn't have time to think too deeply about it. Looking down at Gu Shi, who was not far in front of him, Lu Ye's expression changed. He had already decided to advance to Sunshine on the spot, even if it meant leaving behind regrets, because only by advancing to Sunshine could he participate in the battle and have a chance to change the situation. But what if he could advance without leaving any regrets? It wasn't that he didn't have the ability, but his experience in the Azura field and Su Yuqing and Ma Bin's previous warnings made him unwilling to do so. Or rather, he didn't have the opportunity before. But now, the opportunity was right in front of him. Who is it? An angry shout interrupted Lu Ye's thoughts. A figure flew up and looked warily in Wuxia's direction. It was Qin Xuanba of the High Heavens continent. He had gone to check on Yuan Du's condition at the first opportunity because among the several Sunshine Guardians, he had the best personal relationship with Yuan Du, so he was naturally the most concerned about his injuries. After investigating, he was shocked. Although Yuan Du was not dead, his injuries were serious and shocking. He could tell at a glance that even if Yuan Du was lucky enough to survive, it would be difficult for him to maintain his sunshine cultivation in the future. The corrosion of the Thousand Crescent Sea's water was simply unsolvable. The only thing he could do was to give Yuan Du a large pill to preserve his life for the time being. But then he saw a scene that made his soul jump out of his body. After an inexplicable golden light shot out, Gu Shi, who was also a sunshine guardian like him, was imprisoned on the spot and fell straight to the ground. It wasn't until he was in midair that he saw clearly who had attacked him. It was a woman who looked extremely noble and holy in the golden light, holding a golden toad-like pet beast in her arms. Scanning with his divine sense, Chen Xuanba frowned because he could clearly sense that this woman's cultivation was only at Yu Yao's level. If that was the case, then what was the deal with the golden light that could imprison sunshine? He thought another sunshine had appeared on the three-world island. If it wasn't sunshine, then it must be the power of a magic weapon. But what kind of magic weapon could be so terrifying? Chapter 1986. Before Chen Xuanba could figure it out, a golden light flashed in his field of vision, just like the one he saw earlier. He was shocked and wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The speed of the golden light was beyond his imagination. Even someone as strong as him had no room to dodge. He even had a feeling that once the golden light appeared, he would definitely be hit. No matter how hard he tried to dodge, it would be useless. Chen Xuanba was hit directly. In the next moment, his body sank and his mana was sealed. Just like Gu Shi, he fell straight to the ground. All the spectating cultivators were stunned. Today's conflict on the three-world island had one unforeseen event after another. It was simply too much for the eyes to take in. The strength of three-world island's hidden forces was also shocking. Before today, everyone thought that even if three-world island was a top-notch spiritual island, as long as Rizhao attacked, it would be completely unstoppable. But in reality, at this point in the battle, the 5 Rizhao of the Wanxiang Sea had attacked together, but they only managed to break one of three-world island's protective arrays. They could not do anything to three-world island at all. Such a foundation was simply unheard of. What was even more inconceivable was how three-world island was able to hide so much power under the watchful eyes of the Rizhao guards. The sudden turn of events shocked the other group that was fighting near the three-world island. It was Mu Qing's battle against Luan Xiao and Miao Yan. Originally, Mu Qing could only defend herself against the 2 new Rizhao, Luan Xiao and Miao Yan. But after noticing what happened to Gu Shi and Chen Xuanba, she had no choice but to conserve some of her strength, just in case. She was even quietly moving the battlefield further away to avoid being killed by Hua Ci. Because of this, Luan Xiao and Miao Yan's situation became much better. As for Ma Bin, He Yun, Mo Wen and Li's battle, they had already fought tens of thousands of miles away. The 3 of them were giving it their all, but they did not notice the changes on Three-World Island. In the Three-World Island, Lu Yi walked step by step towards Gu Shi, who was lying on the ground but still in a strange flying posture. He looked down at him with an indifferent expression. "But why do you have to force me?" He never had much ambition. He only occupied the Three-World Island because he wanted to establish a foothold in the myriad phenomenon sea and earn enough cultivation resources for the cultivators of the 3 worlds. He only needed to wait for a few more years, gather enough resources, and polish his Dharma source to perfection. Once he achieved sunshine, he would leave the Wanxiang Sea. From the time he conquered Baiyue to the time he defeated Zixian, everything he did was within the rules of the Wanxiang Sea. He never had the intention to break the rules. Even if Luan Xiao and Yan Miao were promoted to Rizhao, they still stayed obediently in the mermaid territory. The reason why the Myriad Elephant Sea was able to maintain its prosperity for so many years was because of these rules and restrictions. Rashly breaking them would not benefit anyone. However, while he abided by the rules, the person who set the rules was not willing to abide by them. This was very comical. If the person who set the rules wasn't willing to abide by them, then someone else could only set the rules. The affairs of the world are truly unpredictable. Lu Yi sighed. His entire body glowed with a bloody light. Looking at the once lofty and unapproachable Rizhao, who was now lying motionless in front of him, he suddenly realized that all the injustices in this world must be fiercely resisted. The sea of blood rolled and spread out, covering his and Gu Shi's figures. Outsiders could no longer see the situation inside. Lu Yi reached out to grab Gu Shi's head. Gu Shi seemed to sense that something was wrong. Ever since he was imprisoned, he had been waiting for this opportunity. He fiercely activated the power of his divine spirit and used a divine spirit secret technique. Lu Yi vaguely saw an incomparably sharp sword light slashing towards him. However, the strange thing was that the sword light was not physical. After it cut into his body, he did not feel any pain. His expression was slightly dazed. At the same time, in the deity sea, the sword light was rampant. However, under the wash of the rainbow light of the divine lotus, the rampant sword light quickly lost its power and disappeared. Only then did Lu Yi come to his senses. He felt pain in his head. A divine spirit secret technique. Lu Yi understood. It seemed that the method Hua Ci inherited from the ancient coin could seal a cultivator's magic power and physical body. However, it could not seal a cultivator's divine spirit. That was why Gu Shi was able to use a divine spirit secret technique. If it was an ordinary Yu Yao, her divine spirit would definitely be injured. She might even die on the spot. Fortunately, Lu Yi had the divine lotus to protect his deity sea. His divine spirit was slightly damaged. After all, that was a full-strength attack from Rizhao. However, it was not a big deal. He only needed to rest, and he would recover. Gu Shi's eyes were filled with shock. He could not understand why his secret technique did not work. In the next instant, Lu Ye's palm landed on his head. The roots of the talent tree quickly spread and extended. Lu Ye's voice rang in his ears. Die! Gu Shi's eyes suddenly widened, as if they were about to explode and become bloodshot in an instant. This was because when Lu Yi attacked, an indescribable pain swept through his entire body. He clearly felt his blood, magic power, and even his soul being crazily devoured by an unknown force. In contrast, Lu Ye's face was filled with joy. His eyes were tightly shut, and his body could not help but tremble. In a previous experience in the Azura field, Lu Yi had devoured many shadows. He had also experienced what it felt like to use the talent tree to devour living creatures. However, only now did he realize that devouring shadows was completely different from devouring real living creatures. The fatal pleasure was several times greater than the former. Especially when Gu Shi was a Rizhao. He almost sank into it in an instant, unable to extricate himself. Fortunately, he was prepared for this. His tongue was bitten off. Intense pain spread through his body. The taste of blood in his mouth made Lu Ye's consciousness slightly sober. His strong physique allowed his injured tongue to quickly recover. Once again, it was bitten off. This cycle repeated over and over again. Lu Ye's expression was ferocious and terrifying. Blood flowed from his mouth like a malicious spirit. Gu Shi's aura rapidly weakened. From Rizhao to Yu Yao, to Xingxiu, his vitality dimmed, and his aura withered. In just a moment his whole body became dry and withered. His eyes were wide open, and he had completely lost his vitality. The sea of blood roared. Gu Shi's corpse was washed away by the sea of blood and turned into powder. Only a few storage rings were left behind. Not enough. Lu Yi sensed his own body. His qi and blood were surging violently, and his magic power was surging to the extreme. His damaged spirit had already recovered, but his spiritual source had yet to reach a perfect level. In the sea of blood, his gaze turned to another direction. It was where Yuan Du and Qin Xuanba were. Since I've chosen this path, even if it's wrong, I'll continue. With this thought in mind, his body moved. The sea of blood roiled and soon enveloped Yuan Du and Qin Xuanba's location. Of the two Rizhao, one was hanging on by his life because of the effect of the great pill, while the other was hit by the golden light of the treasure coin. Like Gu Shi, he could not move. Suddenly falling into the sea of blood, they were both shocked. They did not notice Gu Shi's death. It's Luya. He really is a blood breed. Yuan Du coughed lightly. His face was pale, and he instantly understood who had done this. At first, he had decided to frame Lu Yi with a blood breed so that he would have a reason to attack the three-world island. In the end, the blood breed, who had agreed in advance, suddenly changed sides. This made him realize that his framing might be true. Otherwise, he could not explain why the blood breed would do such a thing. The betrayal of a blood breed was undoubtedly a cover for one of their own. How ugly! A voice came. Yuan Du's expression changed. He turned around and saw Lu Yi standing beside him. Yuan Du was furious. He was about to attack, but as soon as he circulated his magic power, he felt a sharp pain all over his body. He had no strength at all. Why are you targeting the three-world island? We're just a group of outsiders, a group of poor people struggling to survive in the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi looked at Yuan Du. The entire Wanxiang Sea is filled with people like you. Can't you see that Rizhao is high and mighty? Yuan Du snorted coldly. Immoral people are not worthy of high positions. Boy, after what happened to the three-world island today, you have no future to speak of. Moreover, you dared to harbor Ma Bin. If this matter spreads, even Juyen will not tolerate you. If you know what's good for you, obediently stretch out your neck and then hand over the treasure that connects the merfolk's territory. Perhaps you can still save the disciples of the three-world island. Immoral. Lu Ye's eyes flashed. He suddenly slapped Yuan Du. The slap sent Yuan Du flying into the air. Half of his face was swollen, as expected of Ri Zhao's physical body. If it were Yu Yao, her head would have exploded from this slap. However, Yuan Du only suffered minor injuries. Landing heavily on the ground, Yuan Du stared in disbelief at Lu Yi, who was walking towards him step by step. He never imagined that he would one day be humiliated like this in front of Yu Yao. The reverse blood flow attacked his heart. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his injuries worsened. You think you're worthy of being called immoral? Lu Yi stepped forward, grabbed Yuan Du by the neck, and lifted him up. His face was right in front of Yuan Du's, and he stared at him coldly. Who do you think you are? Yuan Du struggled with all his might. However, a look of horror soon appeared on his face as he screamed in pain. He felt something extra in his body. Then his essence, energy, and spirit were being devoured. Ri Zhao's foundation was rapidly draining away. However, Lu Ye's voice still echoed in his ears. By the way, why aren't you saying anything? Why are you targeting the three-world island? We didn't provoke you in the beginning. We even wanted to visit your mountain. Oh right, Old Tang went to your palace and was rejected by you. When Old Tang came back, he was very angry. Are you happy targeting the three-world island? Now that things have gotten to this point, it's hard to clean up. What is this called? You reap what you sow. Speak. But what? Did speak. Lu Yi flung the noodle body in his hand and blinked. Only then did he realize that Yuan Du was already dead. It's still not enough. Lu Yi flung the corpse away. Then he looked to the side and saw Chen Xuanba staring at him in horror. He grinned and said softly, "Don't be afraid." Chapter 1987. Outside the three-world island, over 100 Yu Yao gathered in one place with bewildered expressions. They had been summoned by Yuan Du. A small number of them were Yu Yao from the first Yuan realm, but most of them were Yu Yao guardians from the various spiritual islands. However, since they were willing to accept Yuan Du's summons, they were more or less related to him. The 100 Yu Yao were led by Yuan Cheng. Yuan Du had brought them here to borrow their strength to break through the three-world islands' protective array. After all, as Ri Zhao, there was no need for him to do something as trivial as breaking the array himself. However, the blood kindred had betrayed him and He Yun had attacked. Yuan Du had no choice but to cooperate and quickly break through the three-world islands' protective array. After that, the Ri Zhao appeared one after another. The 100 or so Yu Yao were completely useless. However, they didn't leave. Instead, they stayed outside the three-world island and watched. The current situation was treacherous. Ma Bin was fighting against He Yun and Mo Wenli. Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao were fighting against Mu Qing. Yuan Du was severely injured and his condition was unknown. Chen Xuanba and Gu Shi had also disappeared into the blood sea after being hit by the golden light. Yuan Cheng looked at the churning blood sea. His heart was filled with fear. He even had the urge to flee from this place. He could vaguely sense that the situation this time was too big. It had far exceeded Yuan Du's expectations. However, he was still a descendant of Yuan Du. If he fled now, there would be no place for him in the 10,000 Elephant Sea in the future. Therefore, he hesitated for a moment. Then he gritted his teeth and shouted, "Friends, follow me. Kill Lu Yi and save the guardians." As soon as he finished speaking, he was the first to charge into the blood sea. Most of the 100 or so Yu Yao hesitated for a moment before following him. A small number of them hesitated. However, given the current situation, they had no choice but to retreat. Lu Yi of the Three Realm Island was indeed renowned. Now, he had even unleashed a blood sea secret technique of such a scale. However, he was still only Yu Yao. He was only one person. With over 100 of them working together, how could they not be able to take him down? Moreover, there were still 3 Ricarius in the blood sea. They did not believe that these 3 Ricarius had completely lost the ability to resist. Even if they were trapped by that mysterious golden light, it would not be that easy for Yu Yao to kill Ricarius. Perhaps Lu Yi of the Three-World Island had already been captured by one of the Ricarius. They only needed to put on an act now, and in the future, they would gain the friendship of the Ricarius protectors. More than 100 figures fell into the sea of blood one after another, like stones sinking into the sea, without the slightest splash of blood. In the blood sea, Lu Yi grabbed Chen Xuanba's body. The arrogant sunshine cultivator was now like a dried fish. His essence, qi, and spirit had been sucked dry, and his vitality had dissipated. He had followed in the footsteps of Gu Shi and Yuan Du. Indeed, it would not be easy for Yu Yao to kill Ri Zhao. Everything else aside, Ri Zhao's physique was incomparably strong. Lu Yi had to expend a lot of effort to defeat Lionheart because his physique was too strong. Yuan Du and the others had been in Ri Zhao's league for many years. In terms of physique, they were many times stronger than Lionheart. Even if they were trapped and unable to resist, Lu Yi would have to use the sword draw or the great windmill secret technique to have a chance to kill them. However, the talent tree's devouring was unreasonable. A strong physique could not stop the roots of the talent tree from entering. At this moment, Lu Ye's eyes were closed. After devouring 3 sunshine cultivators in succession, he could vaguely feel that something was wrong with his body. After examining it closely, a look of surprise appeared on his face. On one of the branches of the talent tree, a flower had unknowingly bloomed. The flower was about to wither, and a small black fruit was in the process of growing at the base of the flower. For some reason, when Lu Yi saw the black fruit, he felt an inexplicable sense of unease. There was no reason for it, but he could feel that once the black fruit matured, something bad would happen to him. He thought of the previous Dao tree successor, Chao Nian. From the looks of it, Chao Nian must have also gone through this stage. The great change in his temperament should be related to this black fruit. The Dao tree could burn everything in the world, but it could not burn the 7 emotions and 6 desires of living beings. These emotions that could not be burned gathered on the talent tree, bloomed, and bore fruit. When it matured, it would completely change a person's temperament. Even at this moment, the black fruit had just taken shape and was far from maturing. Lu Yi could feel that his temperament had changed. It seemed that he was more easily angered and violent. Previously, when he was training in the Azura field, he had tried to devour many shadows. However, that training did not have much of an effect on him. Lu Yi had always thought that the rumors were wrong or exaggerated. Only today did he realize that devouring shadows was completely different from devouring real living beings. This made him slightly wary. He pulled out his consciousness and sensed his spiritual source. It was not perfect yet, but it was not far away. The foundation of the 3 sunshine cultivators had greatly improved the quality of his spiritual source. At this rate, if he could devour 2 more sunshine cultivators. When this thought arose, it was difficult to suppress. At this moment, Lu Yi suddenly sensed that a large amount of life force had intruded into his sea of blood. The sea of blood was formed by his own blood and qi. Even the slightest change in it could not escape his detection. Thus, after a moment's thought, Lu Yi knew what had happened. This is really... Lu Yi tossed Chen Xuanba's corpse aside and took a step forward. His figure had already disappeared. There was a path to heaven, but you refused to take it. There was no door to hell, but you insisted on barging in. Ancestor, where are you? Within the sea of blood, Yuan Qing continuously shouted, his face filled with fear and unease. He had brought 100 Yuyao here, but now he could not see a single person beside him. The viscous sea of blood around him made it difficult for him to move, and even the flow of his transcendence energy was much more difficult. However, that was fine. He believed that Yuan Du was still alive, and should be somewhere at this moment. As long as he could meet up with Yuan Du, he would be able to protect himself. In addition, the two sunshine cultivators, Gu Shi and Chen Xuanba, were also in this sea of blood. Lu Yi only had one Yuyao. No matter what, he had no ability to kill 3 sunshine cultivators. He did not know what that golden light that could seal sunshine was, but the sunshine cultivators would definitely be able to break free quickly. At that time, they would be able to easily break through the sea of blood and allow this world to see the light of day once more. As he looked around, he suddenly stepped on something. He hurriedly looked down. What he saw instantly turned into a look of shock and horror. This was because the thing on the ground was a corpse, and it was a desiccated corpse at that. The corpse's face vaguely resembled Chen Xuanba's, and even the clothes on it were Chen Xuanba's. No. Impossible. Yuan Cheng hurriedly took a few steps back, unwilling to believe what he was seeing. That Chen Xuanba was sunshine, so how could he have died so silently? Suddenly, Yuan Cheng bumped into something. He turned his head and saw that in the sea of blood, a figure had appeared behind him at some point. This figure was silently staring at him with a pair of scarlet eyes. That gaze, it was like a hungry wolf that had just seen a delicious meal. Lu Yi. Yuan Cheng was shocked. He immediately tried to circulate his transcendence energy, but a figure flashed in front of him. Pain shot through his body, and his consciousness blurred. He had just become a Yuyao not long ago. How could he be a match for Lu Yi? In the next instant, an indescribable pain shot through his body, causing Yuan Cheng to cry out in pain. After a few breaths, his voice dissipated. Lu Yi tossed Yuan Cheng's corpse aside, and his figure disappeared into the sea of blood. He muttered in dissatisfaction, "Too weak." He had finally discovered a pattern. The stronger the cultivator, the greater the benefits he would receive after devouring them. The 3 Yuyao who had entered the sea of blood had greatly improved his transcendence energy. However, the Yuyao who had entered the sea of blood were much weaker. For example, Yuan Cheng, who had just become a Yuyao not long ago, the improvements he received to his transcendence energy were practically negligible. This was most likely related to the quality of their transcendence energy. The higher the quality of the transcendence energy he devoured, the greater the benefits he would receive. The effects of devouring Yuyao were not as good as Yuyao's. Fortunately, there were many of them. More than 100 Yuyao were scattered all over the sea of blood. They couldn't find their enemies, nor could they see their companions. The only thing they could do was continuously circulate their power and bombard their surroundings. This was also the best way to deal with the sea of blood. In the end, the sea of blood was also a kind of secret technique. Since it was a secret technique, it naturally had a limit. As long as one could break through this limit, they would be able to break through it. In the beginning, Lu Yi's sea of blood was indeed turbulent under the ferocious attacks of the Yuyao. From the outside, it looked like it could shatter at any moment. However, after enduring the most dangerous early stages as time passed, the sea of blood became more and more stable, gradually calming down. Silently, the vitality of the Yuyao dissipated one after another, and the cultivators who had entered the sea of blood with Yuan Qing perished one after another. In their place, Lu Yi's transcendence energy continuously approached perfection. The continuous devouring caused him to lose himself in thought. At first, he still remembered to occasionally check on the changes in the black fruit on the innate talent tree, constantly keeping an eye on himself. However, as his transcendence energy became more and more complete, and the pleasure of devouring continued to deepen, he completely forgot about everything else. There was only one thought in his mind: to devour everything. After an unknown period of time, there was not a single living being left in the sea of blood. Just as Wuxia was about to head toward the closest and densest source of vitality, his body suddenly shuddered, and he froze on the spot. In this instant, it was as if some extremely miraculous change had occurred in his body. It was precisely this change that had affected his mind and interrupted his instinctive plan. He was abruptly shocked. His condition just now was very strange. When he checked his innate talent tree again, he discovered that the original flower had long since disappeared. The black fruit had already grown to the size of a fist, and its black color had deepened considerably. In fact, it was even glowing. This thing was already not far away from ripening. A wave of lingering fear washed over him. Fortunately, the changes in his body had brought him back to his senses. Otherwise, if this had continued, he was afraid that he would have followed in Chao Nian's footsteps, never to return from that path of no return. That was something he absolutely could not accept. I can't devour anymore. He secretly made up his mind. Only now did he have the time to investigate the changes that had occurred in his body. End of chapter. Chapter 1988. Actually, Li didn't need to check. He already had a hunch. Even though he wasn't actively doing anything, his magic power was flowing madly through his body at an unprecedented speed. His spiritual aperture's magic source was also burning hot. He had perfected his magic source. Wuxia felt a chill run down his spine. It hadn't been easy. When he was in the early and middle stages of the Moon Jade realm, he didn't have a clear idea of what to do. When he realized that he had to polish his magic source to perfection in order to condense the flower of Qi, he was already in the late stages of the Moon Jade realm. Only then did he set off for the Azura domain. He obtained many benefits in the Azura domain. When he returned to the Wanxiang Sea, he bought some, and Jiao Yan gave him some. He calmed his mind and sensed that his magic power was flowing faster and faster. Wuxia could faintly feel a burning sensation between his brows. With his experience of condensing the flower of the body, this abnormal change excited him. This was clearly a sign that the flower of Qi was about to condense. He didn't move or react, only allowing his magic power to flow. Time passed. When the scorching heat between his eyebrows reached a limit, something seemed to have suddenly appeared. In the next moment, the rapidly circulating magic power slowly calmed down. Wuxia hurriedly opened his eyes and flipped his hand. He took out a mirror-like magic treasure from his storage ring and looked at it. Sure enough, he saw the mark of a crescent moon slowly fading between his brows. The flower of Qi had been condensed. This undoubtedly meant that he had reached the peak of the Moon Jade realm. He had passed 2 stages of the 3-flower art. Now, only the flower of God was left. But before that, his magic power was abundant. His Qi and blood were condensed. The Moon Jade realm and the Constellation realm were flawless. Today was the day of the sun. Under normal circumstances, a cultivator would naturally choose a suitable and stable environment to break through to the next realm. At the very least, they had to ensure that they wouldn't be disturbed by others during the process and avoid external factors that could lead to failure. However, Wuxia had no choice. In order to reach this step, he didn't even hesitate to devour the sun of the Wanxiang Sea. The Moon Jade realm was so that he wouldn't have any regrets. Now that the flower of Qi had been condensed, he naturally had to break through to the next realm. Besides, he didn't need a suitable and stable environment. He could break through to the next realm at any time a long time ago. The shackles of life and death for ordinary cultivators could be broken at any time for him. This was the benefit of having a solid foundation, as well as the convenience of reaching the peak of his previous realm. He emptied his mind and no longer restrained his body. When his Qi and blood surged and his dermic powers surged, the shackles had already shattered. Wuxia's body suddenly felt light. Previously, he had devoured the foundations of 3 Rizhao cultivators and 100 Yuyao cultivators. Although his cultivation source had been polished to perfection, what followed was a feeling of fullness. This was because he had devoured not only the cultivation sources of those cultivators, but also their blood essence, transcendence energy, and even their souls, everything. With the accumulation of so many cultivators in Lu Ye's body, it was only natural for Yu Yao to feel bloated. During this period of time, he had even channeled his excess power into his own blood sea. This was also the reason why his blood sea was able to withstand the frenzied attacks of the 100 Yu Yao clones. But at this moment, when that layer of shackles was broken, all the feelings of fullness disappeared without a trace. A joy that was even more intense than when he devoured living beings rose in his heart. Unlike before, this joy would not make him sink into depravity. Instead, it made his mind clear. Lu Yi felt as if his body had undergone an indescribable baptism and sublimation from the inside out. His magic power instantly became several times more vigorous, and it continued to increase. Not only his dermic powers, but his qi and blood as well. Lu Ye's flesh and blood were wriggling, becoming more solid and sturdy. This was undoubtedly a huge change brought about by the advancement of a major realm. The reason why Rizhao's physique was so strong, even for cultivators who were originally dermic cultivators, was because of this baptism during the advancement of a realm. This was the transformation of one's dermic powers from the inside out after many years of accumulation. His spirit sea was also rapidly expanding. The seawater became more solid and deep, and the strength of his soul increased by leaps and bounds. Lu Yi could feel that this change would continue until it gradually stabilized. At that time, his Rizhao realm would be completely stabilized. He clenched his fists lightly. His strength had undergone a tremendous change. He didn't know what level he was at now. After all, he had just advanced and hadn't fought with Rizhao yet. The only thing he knew was that even though he had just advanced, he was definitely not comparable to an ordinary cultivator in the early stages of Rizhao realm. He really wanted to find someone to fight. He wanted to have a fight where fists met flesh and swords saw blood. With this thought in mind, he couldn't hold himself back. Lu Yi couldn't help but frown. It seemed that the black fruit on the talent tree wasn't fully ripe yet, but it was still affecting his temperament. He needed to be vigilant. Suddenly, a strange movement came from his waist. Lu Yi looked down and muttered to himself. Then he unsheathed his blade. "You're awake?" he asked softly. His blade was transformed from the qi of the soldier tribe when it swallowed the Panshan blade. All this time, the qi had been in a deep slumber. This was also a characteristic of the soldier tribe. They were an extremely ancient tribe. They didn't have a physical body and could only transform into various kinds of weapons. If a living creature recognized them as its master, the soldier tribe would fall into a deep slumber. Only when the master died in battle would the soldier tribe awaken again and wait for the next master. Lu Yi didn't activate the Panshan blade just now, but it reacted. This made Lu Yi think that the qi had awakened. But under his perception, the Panshan blade was still the same. The qi didn't show any signs of awakening. If that was the case, then what was the strange movement just now? After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi suddenly thought of something. He immediately channeled his transcendence energy into the Panshan blade. The Panshan blade trembled slightly. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. He realized that his guess was correct. The Panshan blade was about to be unsealed. It had been unsealed once before. It was when he first obtained the qi after advancing from a constellation to a Yuyao. When he first obtained the qi, it was only a spiritual treasure. When he advanced to a Yuyao, it became a transcendent artifact. This wasn't an advancement, because the true Fang blade was of extremely high quality. After it recognized Lu Yi as its master, it planted layers of seals on itself based on Lu Ye's strength at that time. Only when Lu Ye's strength increased would the seals be unsealed. Now that Lu Yi was sunshine, the qi's seals would be unsealed again. This made Lu Yi secretly look forward to it. The qi was already a transcendent artifact. If it was unsealed again, would it become a supreme artifact? Would the qi be a supreme artifact? Lu Yi didn't know, but he would find out soon. He channeled his transcendence energy into the Pan-Shan blade, causing some changes to it. But this wasn't enough. Lu Yi quickly understood the reason. Sunshine was the cultivation of a god. Only channeling his transcendence energy wouldn't be enough. With this thought in mind, he wrapped the Pan-Shan blade with his divine sense. The Pan-Shan blade trembled more and more. In just a few breaths of time, a dim light flashed across the Pan-Shan blade. An extremely sharp aura emanated from the blade, disappearing in a flash. Lu Yi looked at the Pan-Shan saber that had been unsealed once again and frowned slightly. This was different from what he'd imagined. The Pan-Shan blade didn't seem to be a supreme artifact. Compared to before, the blade didn't seem to have changed too much. But he flicked his finger on the Pan-Shan blade. A bloody gash appeared on his hand, and blood flowed out. The Pan-Shan blade seemed to have become sharper and more durable. This undoubtedly made it more suitable for sunshine cultivators. He wouldn't have to worry about the blade being damaged in battle. It would also be more convenient for him to kill his enemies. If the Pan-Shan blade was a high-grade transcendent artifact before, then it should be a top-grade transcendent artifact now. Lu Yi was slightly disappointed that it wasn't a supreme artifact, but he could still accept it. He exhaled softly. The flower of qi had been condensed, and sunshine had advanced. Now it was time to end everything. With a thought, the sea of blood surrounding him retracted. Lu Ye's figure appeared in the blink of an eye. 3 of the 5 sunshine guardians of the Wanxiang Sea had died. Only 2 remained. Including Zi Xian's He Yun, there were 3 sunshine cultivators to deal with. Previously he only had Ma Bin, Luan Xiaoa, and Yen Miao. They were evenly matched. Now that he was here, he should be able to change the situation. Right, there was still Hua Xi. With her on the Wanxiang Sea, no amount of sunshine would be enough to kill. Lu Yi was about to look in Hua Xi's direction, but he couldn't help but frown. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the 3 World Islands Trade District. That place was supposed to be peaceful. Even when Yuan Du attacked the 3 World Island, he didn't intend to affect that area. Too many powers were involved there. If the battle really did affect that area, he would offend too many people. But at this moment, the trade district was filled with wails and cries of war. Countless cultivators were fighting there. The streets were littered with corpses and minced meat. What was going on? Lu Yi didn't understand. Even if the incident in the 3 Worlds Island was rather big, the business district should not have been affected. And yet, the business district was already in a state of chaos. Countless shops had been destroyed. Lu Yi even saw cultivators looting goods in the process. He turned his head and saw that the cultivators around the 3 World Island had disappeared. Even the sunshine cultivators who were fighting were gone. He was the only one standing in the air in the area where the cultivators were stationed. Where was Hua Xi? Lu Ye's heart tightened. He vaguely realized that during the half-day when he was concentrating on condensing the flower of qi and advancing to sunshine, something had happened. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so chaotic. Looking at the pill room, Hua Xi, who was supposed to be standing there, was nowhere to be seen. Lu Ye's expression changed. He hurriedly took out a sound talisman to send a message to Hua Xi. At this moment, there was a sound not far away, and a familiar aura came. He hurriedly turned his head and saw the water of the Wanxiang Sea churning. A familiar figure appeared in his field of vision. Who else could it be but Hua Xi? End of chapter. Chapter 1989. Hua Xi stood quietly on the sea beside the 3 World Island. Lu Yi took a closer look and realized that she wasn't standing on the sea, but rather on the back of her pet beast. Her pet beast, which possessed the Pishio bloodline, had shrunk to the size of a table, just enough for Hua Xi to stand on. Their eyes met and Lu Yi hurriedly flew towards her. Just as he was about to ask about the situation here, Lu Yi couldn't help but be taken aback when he met Hua Xi's eyes. Because her eyes gave him a very unfamiliar feeling. There wasn't the slightest hint of joy from a long-awaited reunion, only surprise and uncertainty. She looked like she didn't recognize him at all. "What's wrong?" Lu Yi asked nervously. Hua Xi's expression was a little blank as she shook her head and said, "I don't know, I've forgotten a lot of things." "Or you?" Why do I feel like you're very close and important, but I can't remember who you are? Lu Ye's expression stiffened and his face twitched. Don't joke around. Wuxia didn't have any other bad habits, but she liked to play pranks. Lu Yi was deeply affected by this. Back then, when he saw her holding a child, he even mistakenly thought that he had a child, but it turned out that it was actually someone else's child. At that time, Wuxia even tried her best to show him her motherly love. Wuxia didn't say anything. She just looked at him quietly, her beautiful eyes as deep as the abyss. Lu Ye's heart was in turmoil. He reached out and grabbed one of her hands. Circulating his magic power, he spread out his divine sense and carefully examined her. A moment later, Lu Yi looked at the woman in front of him with a complicated expression. Do you really not remember me? There was nothing wrong with Huaxi's body. In fact, it was very good. Her magic power was incomparably pure, and her foundation was solid. What was even more incredible was that her cultivation had reached the late moon jade stage, only one step away from the sunshine stage. He couldn't help but wonder if Huaxi was playing with him. But after thinking about it carefully, Huaxi must have undergone some unknown changes during the years she was sealed. Otherwise, her strength couldn't have improved so much. Perhaps these changes had affected her memory. Huaxi shook her head slowly. It's okay. Lu Yi smiled and held her hand. Take it slow. As long as she was fine, everything was fine. As for her missing memories, she would be able to recover them sooner or later. Moreover, now was not the time to investigate this matter. While talking to Huaxi, Lu Yi vaguely sensed that the entire Wanxiang Sea was in chaos. Everywhere, there were actually quite a number of Rizhao fighting each other. First, tell me what happened just now. Something must have happened while I was leveling up to Rizhao. Formless palace. Huaxi said. Through her explanation, Lu Yi finally understood where the chaos in the myriad phenomenon sea had come from. The source was actually Yaya. Yaya had previously broken 2 of her jade bracelets, recovering her sealed cultivation and memories. After helping Lu Yi and the others to injure Yuan Du, she quickly escaped. After she left, a portal suddenly opened, and a Bone Clan and a demon race cultivator chased after her. The 2 Rizhao chased in the direction of Yaya's escape, but they left the door open. Lu Yi had actually noticed this at the time, but didn't pay much attention to it. This was because a portal opened through a secret technique from a distance shouldn't be maintained for too long. Just as Lu Yi spread out the sea of blood, wantonly devouring the sunshine and moon jade of the Wanxiang Sea, and then leveling up to Rizhao, a large number of cultivators suddenly rushed out from the portal. Surprisingly, there were more than 10 Rizhao leading a large number of moon jade and star constellations, descending from an unknown place to the Wanxiang Sea. This unforeseen event caught the 2 sides fighting by surprise. This was because these cultivators who suddenly appeared were indiscriminate, and all those who were not on their side were enemies. The Rizhao who were fighting before were all involved. From afar, I heard someone shouting something about Formless Palace, so I guessed that these cultivators should be from this faction. Formless Palace. Lu Yi thought for a moment and realized that he had never heard of this faction, let alone where it was located. But this should be the faction where Yaya came from. From the looks of it, the portal didn't disappear immediately after the 2 Rizhao passed through, causing Formless Palace to investigate the situation in the Wanxiang Sea. Perhaps they used some method to strengthen the portal, and then invaded on a large scale. To any faction, the Wanxiang Sea was a piece of delicious cake. Usually, they wouldn't have the chance to invade, but today's chaos gave Formless Palace hope, so they acted decisively. Not to mention completely occupying the Wanxiang Sea, they only needed to ransack the major spiritual islands, and Formless Palace would be able to make a fortune. After knowing the reason, Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect the source of this chaos to be Yaya. But when Yaya helped him, she probably didn't think so much. Formless Palace's subsequent actions were just following the trend. To be able to send out more than 10 Rizhao after sending out the 2 Rizhao, this Formless Palace had a strong foundation. You'll stay here and protect me? Lu Yi asked. Wan Xiao, Yan Miao, and the rest couldn't stay. They were Rizhao, and they were 2 obvious targets. Only Hua Ci stayed nearby after the chaos broke out. She kept an eye on Lu Ye's situation and didn't let anyone disturb him. Those Rizhao from Formless Palace were busy attacking the major spiritual islands and looting resources. Naturally, they didn't pay much attention to Lu Ye's situation. The Wanxiang Sea was in complete chaos. This was something that hadn't happened for many years. Tracing back to the last chaos in the Wanxiang Sea, it might have been tens of thousands of years ago. Many thoughts flashed through Lu Ye's mind. He vaguely sensed that this chaos wouldn't last long. There were more than 5 Rizhao from the Wanxiang galaxy. There were others. Once they received the news, they would definitely rush over to quell the chaos. They were not the only ones. If the forces behind the other spiritual islands knew that their spiritual islands were robbed and their cultivators were killed, they would definitely not sit back and do nothing. They would definitely send reinforcements. With the connection of the worm path, as long as the news was transmitted in time, it wouldn't take much time. Formless Palace should also know about the situation in the Wanxiang Sea, so their current mentality should be to get something and run. But what about after they left? The Rizhao from the various galaxies gathered in the Wanxiang Sea. What kind of chaos would it be? The Rizhao from the major galaxies were willing to abide by the rules of the Wanxiang Sea and not come here easily because they believed that the Wanxiang galaxy could protect their own interests and the safety of their cultivators. In fact, the Wanxiang galaxy had done a good job for so many years. They didn't give others a chance to interfere. The Formless Palace's chaos had ruined the reputation of the Wanxiang galaxy. They would definitely lose the trust of the major galaxies, giving their Rizhao a reason to interfere in the Wanxiang Sea. Perhaps from now on, the Rizhao from the local galaxy wouldn't be the only Rizhao on the Wanxiang Sea. Other Rizhao could also come and take charge. Although this was only Lu Ye's guess, it was very likely to happen. He was extremely glad that he had advanced to Rizhao at this time. Otherwise, the three-world island wouldn't have much say at that stage. Who wouldn't covet such a top-grade spiritual island? He took out the sound talisman to check and found that both Yen Miao and Luan Xiaoa could still transmit messages. This meant that the 2 women were still alive. As for Ma Bin, Lu Yi wasn't worried at all. The famous Green Demon King wouldn't die so easily. The chaos in the Wanxiang Sea was unavoidable, so what should they do to prepare for the future? Moreover, he had killed 3 Nikitaresu from the Wanxiang galaxy. He had formed a deadly feud with the local galaxy, and Ma Bin was on his side. Under normal circumstances, there would be no place for the cultivators of the 3 realms in the vast Wanxiang Sea. Previously, Lu Yi had been forced to retreat and give up the 3-world island. He was still willing to do so. However, now that he had advanced to Rizhao and had a trump card like Hua Ci, he couldn't help but think differently. Why should the 3-world cultivators retreat and give up the 3-world island? This was the foundation that everyone had painstakingly built up. Thinking of this, hostility grew in his heart. The 3-world island was too small. Why not take the opportunity to control the Wanxiang Sea? In this way, the 3-world cultivators could have anything they wanted in the future. The Jade Snail Galaxy would also become a famous top galaxy in the universe sooner or later. Yes, with his current foundation, he was actually qualified to control the Wanxiang Sea. Once this thought appeared, he couldn't suppress it anymore. If it were in the past, Lu Yi might have considered it more. However, the black fruit on the talent tree still affected him greatly. This also caused him to be easily swayed by his emotions when considering things. Lu Yi suddenly turned his head to look at the chaotic 3-world island. He held Hua Ci's waist and said, "Keep your beast and don't leave my side." A familiar scent lingered at the tip of Lu Ye's nose. He greedily inhaled a breath. Hua Ci frowned secretly. She acutely sensed that something was wrong with Lu Ye's state. However, she still kept her beast and hugged it in her arms, allowing Lu Yi to hold her. In the next instant, 2 figures swept across the sky above the 3-world island. Lu Yi coldly swept his gaze across. He could tell at a glance that some of the cultivators on the island were different. These cultivators' auras were especially arrogant, unrestrained, and unbridled. If he wasn't mistaken, these cultivators with arrogant auras should be from the Formless Palace. At this moment, These formless palace cultivators were looting the major stores under the lead of the two Yu Yao. Perhaps some people had resisted before, but they were all killed without exception. Therefore, in the face of these outsiders looting, the cultivators of the major stores didn't dare to resist at all. After all, given the current situation on the three-world island, the two Yu Yao were enough to suppress everything. The formless palace had obviously investigated the situation here, so they left behind a few people to deal with the aftermath. Lu Yi was enraged. He immediately shouted, "Stop looting in my house." As soon as he finished speaking, a blood-red light shone around him. Blood arrows shot out from the sky. The formless palace cultivators who were looting everywhere, whether they were out in the open or in the dark. Some of them were even inside their houses. At this moment, they all suffered a devastating blow. The blood arrows pierced through the bodies of one cultivator after another, taking away their vitality. Even the two Yu Yao who had stayed behind to guard the stores weren't spared. They didn't even see who had attacked them before they lost their lives in a daze. End of chapter. Chapter 1990. In an instant, the chaos on the three-world island was quelled. Countless fleeing cultivators looked up and saw Lu Ye's face. They were all moved to tears. The cultivators of the formless palace were unscrupulous. Not only did they plunder resources, but they were also merciless when they killed people. Some of the formless palace's cultivators even did many beastly things, causing many beautiful cultivators to suffer. Now that these evildoers were killed by Lu Yi, they were naturally grateful and finally felt a sense of security in this chaos. After dealing with the three-world island, Lu Yi turned and left. The formless palace's cultivators landed near the three-world island, so they were very familiar with the situation here, so it was unlikely that they would send more people over. In other words, as long as the merchants on the three-world island did not run around, there was a high probability that there would be no danger. Lu Yi took Wuxia and flew in that direction, following a familiar aura that came from afar. After advancing to sunshine, not only did his foundation improve, but his flying speed also increased by leaps and bounds. He sensed Luan Xiao and Yan Miao's auras in that direction, so they should be fighting with someone. Given the current situation, of course, he had to gather his own people first. But before that, tell me in detail about the golden light you shot out earlier, Lu Yi said. He needed to understand Hua Xi's current abilities. The vigorous aura blew on Hua Xi's ear, making her feel a little numb. Her eyes blurred, but they quickly regained their cold nobility. That golden light was not my ability. It was Little Melon's ability, Hua Xi explained. Little Melon. Lu Yi lowered his head and glanced at the Pixiu in her arms, the corner of his eyes twitching. As long as Little Melon devours enough water from the Wanxiang Sea or the corresponding spiritual energy, it can shoot out that golden light. It can even seal sunshine. However, Little Melon's body can only store enough energy to shoot out 2 rays of golden light. After it's used up, it needs to be replenished. This may be related to our strength. When it becomes stronger, it should be able to store more energy. 2 rays of golden light. Lu Yi understood. No wonder Hua Xi did not do anything after she first imprisoned Gu Shi and then Chen Xuanba. It turned out that at that time, the energy stored in Little Melon's body had been used up. This was in line with the power displayed by the ancient coin, but compared to the ancient coin that could only emit a golden light and needed to be replenished, after Small Melon swallowed and inherited this ability, it was obviously more useful than the ancient coin alone. However, whether it was 1 or 2 rays of golden light, it wasn't a big deal. If it was placed somewhere else, it might be very troublesome for Little Melon to replenish it, but this was the Wanxiang Sea. As long as it was thrown into the sea, it would be replenished in a short moment. The reason why Lu Yi had the idea of controlling the myriad elephant sea was entirely because of the confidence that Hua Xi gave him. On the 10,000 elephant sea, Hua Xi, who had mastered Small Melon, was an invincible existence in a one-on-one battle. Not bad, not bad. Lu Yi patted Little Melon's head. Gua! Small Melon seemed to be a little unhappy as it rolled its 2 bulging eyes. As they flew, they passed by several chaotic spiritual islands. All of them were plundered by the cultivators of the Formless Palace. Moreover, the Formless Palace was selective in the targets they plundered. They did not even look at the spiritual islands below the high-class spiritual islands because there was nothing to gain. The targets they plundered were all high-class spiritual islands and top-class spiritual islands. The top-class spiritual islands, in particular, were their most important targets. It was unknown how many cultivators were fleeing. However, in such a chaotic situation, where could the cultivators escape to? Rather than running away recklessly, it was better to stay on the island and gather the strength of the entire spiritual island. Perhaps then they might have the ability to fight. Moreover, the cultivators who could occupy the high-class spiritual islands were all from wealthy backgrounds. They were all proud and unyielding. Many of them would not be able to give up their home base and escape. Therefore, most of the cultivators on the high-class spiritual islands stayed on their own spiritual islands. If it was the case on the high-class spiritual islands, it would be even more so for the top-class spiritual islands. Lu Yi followed the trail with Hua Xiai and saw 5 figures fighting in the sky from afar. Luan Xiao and Yan Miao were among them. What surprised Lu Yi was that Mu Qing was also among them. Lu Yi did not have a good impression of this woman. During the battle with Zixian, he was stopped by Yuan Du when he chased the fleeing Lionheart to the periphery of the island of versatility. Mu Qing also appeared at that time, but she did not uphold justice for him. If Jiao Yan was not present at that time, Yuan Du might have really done it himself. Previously, Luan Xiao and Yan Miao teamed up to fight Mu Qing. The 2 women were not her match even when they joined forces. It was clear that Mu Qing's strength was not ordinary. However, what surprised Lu Yi was that the 2 sides who were originally fighting fiercely were now showing signs of joining forces. The 3 women were currently fighting with 2 strangers, Rizhao. What surprised Lu Yi even more was that one of the 2 Rizhao was actually from the insect clan. As for the other one, if Lu Yi was not mistaken, he should be from the Three-Eyed Clan. This was an uncommon clan, but this clan had a 3rd eye between their eyebrows, so it was easy to recognize them. The Three-Eyed Clan called it the Heavenly Eye. Those who could cultivate secret arts with this eye often had mysterious abilities. At this moment, the Insect Clan was fighting in close combat. Relying on his rough skin and thick flesh, he disrupted the 3 women's formation. The Heavenly Eye of the Three-Eyed Clan was already open, constantly shooting out mysterious light from it, making the 3 women flustered. There were also powerful divine senses clashing, invisible dangers lurking in the shadows. After all, Luan Xiao and Yan Miao had just advanced to Rizhao not long ago. The previous battle with Mu Qing was their first battle after advancing to Rizhao. Their performance was not satisfactory, and now they were even more strained. If Mu Qing had not helped them from time to time, they would have been in danger. Even so, Luan Xiao and Yan Miao were still injured. Lu Yi didn't bother to hide his presence. Naturally, the 5 Rikhas who were fighting each other immediately sensed his presence. After realizing it was him, Luan Xiao could not help but be overjoyed. Junior brother Lu. She did not expect Lu Yi to have advanced to Rizhao. From the looks of it, Lu Yi spread out the blood sea at the 3-world island to hide his advancement to Rizhao. As expected of junior brother Lu, the speed of his cultivation advancement was really fast. If she hadn't advanced a little earlier, she would have been left in the dust in terms of cultivation. This distraction was immediately taken advantage of by the Three-Eyed Clan's Rizhao. A mysterious light shot out from his heavenly eye and was about to hit Luan Xiao. Yan Miao could not save her in time because she was entangled by the Insect Clan's Rizhao. At the crucial moment, a mirror appeared out of thin air and blocked in front of Luan Xiao. The mysterious light hit the mirror. The mirror was undamaged, but the mysterious light was reflected back and hit the Insect Clan's Rizhao, causing him to pause. Yan Miao took the opportunity to slow down. Although she knew that Mu Qing's action was to protect herself, because the 3 women were not a match for the Insect Clan's Rizhao, and if they lost Luan Xiao, she and Yan Miao would be like fish on a chopping board, but Luan Xiao still looked at Mu Qing gratefully. The debt of saving his life was real. Don't be distracted, Mu Qing shouted. Although she was surprised that Lu Yi had advanced to Rizhao, the 2 opponents were very strong. One was a newly advanced Rizhao, whose cultivation had not stabilized yet. If he forcibly joined the battle, not only would he not be of help, but he would also be a burden. While speaking, Mu Qing sent a message to Lu Yi, "Island Master Lu, please move from the side and disturb them." Lu Yi ignored her and went straight for the three-eyed clan's Rizhao. Although he had just arrived at the battlefield, he saw clearly that the three-eyed clan's Rizhao was more troublesome than the insect clan. As long as he was dealt with, the insect clan's Rizhao would not be a problem. Seeing that Lu Yi did not listen to her advice, Mu Qing was angry, but there was nothing she could do. After all, just half a day ago, they were enemies. Now, they were forced to cooperate because of the Formless Palace's invasion. Lu Yi did not cooperate with her, so she could not do anything. Fortunately, the news had been sent out, and the other senior brothers were on their way. She just needed to delay for a while. As she was thinking, she suddenly saw a golden light flashing by Lu Ye's side. Mu Qing's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively wanted to dodge. She had seen this golden light twice before. Neither Gu Shi nor Qin Xuanba could dodge it. Once they were hit, they were immediately imprisoned. She had never seen such an unreasonable golden light. At that time, she had observed that the golden light came from a noble Yuyao woman. However, after the Formless Palace's invasion, she had not seen the woman's figure again. Until now, the three-eyed clan's Rizhao reacted quickly. He dodged to the side almost at the same time the golden light was shot out. However, what shocked him was that the golden light, which he should have dodged, still hit his body. The three-eyed clan's Rizhao's expression stiffened. At this moment his body and magic power were all sealed. He could not summon any power at all. His entire body fell into the 10,000 elephant sea like a kite with a broken string. He was scared out of his wits. He had heard about the terrifying erosion of the 10,000 elephant sea's water. If he fell into the sea in this state, how could he survive? The only thing he could summon was his soul power. "Save me!" His soul power surged wildly. As he attacked in all directions, he sent a message to his insect clan companion. The insect clan's Rizhao's reaction was not slow either. His companion was hit and fell into the sea. He did not wait for his companion to call for help. He forced Mu Qing and Miao Miao to retreat with one move and rushed toward his companion. However, at this moment, another golden light hit him head-on. The golden light covered his body. The insect clan's Rizhao's body also stiffened, and he fell into the sea. The last thing he saw from the corner of his eyes was a human cultivator rushing toward him with a woman in his arms. The sword light was as bright as a waterfall. Blood rained down. Mu Qing was frozen in place. She stared blankly at the horrifying scene in front of her. For a moment, she could not believe her eyes. She clearly saw that the three-eyed clan's Rizhao's body was shattered the moment Lu Yi brushed past him. Then came the insect clan's Rizhao. The insect clan's innately strong carapace was difficult to damage even for Rizhao of the same level. However, under Lu Ye's long sword, it was as fragile as paper. End of chapter. Chapter 1991. The powerful insect clan and Rizhao from the three-eyed clan died on the spot in just a few seconds. Even though Mu Qing knew that the terrifying power of the golden light had an extremely strong sealing effect, Lu Ye's terrifying killing intent still terrified her. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, it would have been hard to believe that someone who had just advanced to Rizhao and had not even stabilized his realm could have such ruthless means. Therefore, when Lu Yi killed the two rises and turned to look at her, Mu Qing didn't hesitate at all. A layer of blood mist burst out from her body, and she activated some unknown secret technique. Her whole body turned into a rainbow light and fled into the distance. At that moment, she felt a cold, murderous intent from Lu Ye's gaze. Her decisive response surprised Lu Yi slightly. She only glanced in the direction she fled in before withdrawing her gaze. The matter of the Wanxiang Sea could be dealt with later. The priority now was still the Formless Palace. "Are you okay?" Lu Yi looked at Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao. The two girls shook their heads. Whether it was the battle with Mu Qing or the battle with the three-eyed insect clan, they only suffered minor injuries. It was not a big problem. Where is Senior Ma Bin? Lu Yi asked. The vast Wanxiang Sea was now extremely chaotic. There were movements and aftershocks of battles everywhere, but he couldn't sense Ma Bin's aura. This was undoubtedly not right. Ma Bin was Rizhao. Even if his injuries had not healed, as long as he fought, his aura would leak out. Unless he was no longer in the Wanxiang Sea. Yan Miao said. When the people from the Formless Palace appeared, Mo Wenli went to fight. He Yun escaped and Senior Ma Bin chased after him. Lu Yi was stunned. This old senior from the 9 states had a strong killing intent. He was clearly not in a good state, but he still went to kill others. However, since he did so, he must have a plan in mind. Lu Yi nodded and turned to look around. After confirming his current location, he thought of something and said, Senior sisters, this place is not far from Four Corner Island. I'll have to trouble you to take care of it. Four Corner Island did not have Rizhao to hold the fort. Furthermore, the spiritual island that they were occupying was the Baiyue of the past. They would definitely be targeted by the Formless Palace. If Rizhao did not make a move, it would be fine. With Four Corner Island's foundation, they could barely hold on for a while. However, once Rizhao made a move, it would definitely be difficult for Four Corner Island to resist. Four Corner Island and Three World Island had always had a good relationship. In the past few months, Guardian Yao had secretly helped Lu Yi many times. Now that Lu Yi was in trouble, she naturally couldn't sit by and do nothing. Wan Xiaoa and Yan Miao nodded slightly. They didn't stop and immediately flew in the direction of Four Corner Island. Lu Yi continued to fly in another direction with Hua Si in her arms. The Pixiu pet beast in her arms was nowhere to be seen. Evidently, she had tossed it into the omniform sea to devour the seawater. Lu Yi looked down as he flew. He could vaguely see the shadow of the pet beast following closely behind him. Its speed was slower than his, but as long as he brought Hua Si along, this little guy would be able to find him on its own. Hence, he didn't have to worry about it getting lost. In the entire omniform sea, there were many forces on the various spiritual islands. However, there were only 2 places that Lu Yi was concerned about other than his own island. One was Four Corner Island, which Luan Xiaoa and Yan Miao were heading to. The other was Five Color Island, where Tao Wu was. In the initial stages of Three World Islands development, they encountered a huge crisis. It was Tao Wu who first expressed his full support and opened a branch of Five Color Merchant Guild on Three World Island. Formless Palace would definitely not let go of a top-notch spiritual island like Five Color Island. Hence, no one knew what the current situation was. However, Lu Yi could feel that in the direction of Five Color Island, Rizhao's aura was rampant. No one was prepared for Formless Palace's sudden invasion of the omniform sea. Most importantly, they had too much Rizhao this time and the timing was too perfect. It was when Three World Island was in conflict. The 5 Sunshine Protectors were all distracted by Three World Island. Among them, 3 died in battle while the other 2 were distracted. This allowed Formless Palace to successfully invade. If it were any other time, Yuan Du and the others would have quickly dealt with the opening of such a door, not giving Formless Palace a chance to invade. When Lu Yi rushed to Five Color Island, the entire place was shrouded in a gloomy fog. Cries of agony could be heard everywhere. Most of the buildings on Five Color Island had collapsed. Countless cultivators had died tragically on the spot. Intense battles broke out everywhere. It was obvious that the cultivators on Five Color Island were fighting like trapped beasts. Lu Ye's expression was gloomy because he couldn't sense Tao Wu's aura. There were many Yu Yao on the island, but the aura of those Yu Yao was tyrannical. It was obvious that they were all from Formless Palace. When Lu Yi arrived, a spiritual force landed on him. Following that, a faint voice sounded, "I can finally move my muscles." As the voice sounded, a figure rushed out from the depths of Five Color Island. It was obviously Formless Palace's Sunshine, who was in charge of leading the team to Five Color Island. Lu Yi looked up and saw a brawny man with an overbearing physique appear in his field of vision. This guy wasn't tall, but he gave off an extremely sturdy feeling. Moreover, in terms of aura alone, Lu Yi was inferior to him. Lu Yi, who had just advanced to Sunshine, couldn't tell what level the other party was at. He vaguely estimated that the other party was at least in the middle stage of sunshine. Moreover, judging from the other party's physique and chi and blood, he was obviously a body cultivator. He looked like a human. As for whether he was a human or not, Lu Yi didn't know. In this world, there were many races that looked similar to humans, but in fact, they weren't. He led the team here to plunder the resources of Five Color Island. He didn't meet a decent opponent at all. It could be said that Lu Yi came at the right time. After sensing for a while, the brawny man frowned and showed a dissatisfied expression. What's going on? A little guy who just advanced to sunshine not long ago. Saying so, he raised his fist. I'll crush you with one punch. Lu Yi just looked at him quietly, indifferent to his arrogance. It wasn't until the brawny man was 100 feet away from him that he suddenly patted Hua Xi's waist. In the next moment, a golden light shot out from the Pai Xiao in Hua Xi's arms. On the way here, the Pai Xiao had already replenished its energy and returned to Hua Xi's side. The distance of 100 feet was covered in an instant. The brawny man's arrogant expression changed to one of astonishment. His body crossed the space and rushed in front of Lu Yi. Then he saw Lu Yi raise a long sword. The sword's edge was cold and unrestrained. It was as if the brawny man had taken the initiative to collide with the Pan Shan sword. The brawny man desperately tried to dodge, but he couldn't activate the Fa Li in his body. The sudden change caused him to collide directly with the tip of the Pan Shan sword. The sword sank 3 inches into his flesh. Blood flowed freely. Lu Yi raised an eyebrow. He was secretly surprised by the brawny man's strong physique. Although he didn't use much strength, the Pan Shan sword's quality had greatly improved after he advanced to sunshine. It hadn't taken him much effort to kill the insectoid before. The brawny man's physique was even tougher than the insectoid's carapace from before. Lu Yi exerted strength in his hand, and the Pan Shan sword pierced through his body. The brawny man's face contorted in intense pain. His eyes were bloodshot. He didn't know what the golden light was, but his Fa Li had been sealed. He was like a fish on a chopping board. This situation terrified him. Only now did he realize that Sunshine, who had just advanced to sunshine, dared to come after him. He must have a trump card. Fortunately, he wasn't stupid. Since he couldn't activate his Fa Li, he immediately tried to activate his soul power. But Lu Yi had already pulled out his Pan Shan sword and kicked the brawny man. After working together with Hua Xi several times, Lu Yi discovered a problem. The treasure coin's power wasn't without flaws. This flaw was soul power. The treasure coin's golden light couldn't seal Sunshine's soul power. Sunshine's soul power was so strong that it was impossible for anyone other than him to resist it. Lu Yi wasn't too worried about himself. Even if Sunshine's cultivation was higher than his, he had the Rainbow Divine Lotus to stabilize his soul. As long as he didn't suffer too much impact, he wouldn't be in any danger. But Hua Xi was different. With Yu Yao's cultivation, she wouldn't have a good ending if she was attacked by Sunshine's soul power. Even her Pixiu pet beast wouldn't be able to withstand it. So when Lu Yi sensed that the brawny man was about to activate his soul power, he immediately kicked him away. Lu Yi used his strength cleverly. The brawny man only flew a few hundred feet before he fell into the 10,000 Elephant Sea in an arc, creating a huge splash. This guy had thick skin and flesh, so killing him was troublesome. Since that was the case, throwing him into the 10,000 Elephant Sea was the same. No matter how high his cultivation was or how strong his physical body was, if he fell into the 10,000 Elephant Sea while sealed, only death awaited him. Yuan Du was able to survive earlier because he hadn't fallen into the sea while sealed, so he could still struggle for a while. On this side, Rizhao's confrontation only took a short moment to determine the winner. On the Five-Colored Island, not many people noticed the battle here. The cultivators of the Five-Colored Island were busy fighting back, while the cultivators of the Formless Palace were busy killing and looting. Until a sea of blood suddenly spread out, covering the sky and covering the earth. It descended from the sky and enveloped the entire Five-Colored Island. In the sea of blood, Lu Yi and Hua Xi stood side by side, but his treasured blood clones had already moved out. After his cultivation improved, so did his treasured blood clones. All of them were in the Sunshine Realm. Under such circumstances, how could the people of the Formless Palace resist? But the reason Lu Yi spread the Sea of Blood wasn't to make it easier to kill the cultivators of the Formless Palace, but to find Bai An's whereabouts. There was no aura of Bai An here, so Lu Yi suspected that he had already died. But after searching everywhere, he still couldn't find Bai An's corpse. It wasn't until the treasured blood clones asked a few cultivators that they learned that before the people of the Formless Palace came, Bai An had already called for the cultivators of the 5-colored island to take refuge in the 10,000 Elephant Island. This guy didn't die. He was smart. Lu Yi heaved a sigh of relief. Now it seemed that many people on the 5-colored island had responded to Bai An's call and followed him to the 10,000 Elephant Island, but there were still many people who stayed. Lu Yi didn't know why these people chose to stay. Everyone had their own ideas. If they didn't want to, Bai An couldn't force them. But now, many people who stayed had been killed. End of chapter. Chapter 1992. After a short while, the Sea of Blood disappeared. On the 5-colored island, the surviving cultivators exchanged glances with one another, their hearts filled with lingering fear. Lu Yi was already flying toward the island of Versatility. He did not go to the 4-sided island, as Luan Xiao had just sent a message saying that the 4-sided island was safe and sound. It was not even affected by the incident. Although the Formless Palace had sent many people, there were so many spiritual islands in the Vientiane Sea. They would definitely prioritize attacking the top-grade spiritual islands first. There were also some upper-class spiritual islands that were attacked. However, most of the upper-class spiritual islands were safe. Lu Yi asked Luan Xiao and Yen Miao to guard the 4-sided island in case of any unforeseen circumstances. The two ladies were slightly weaker after all, and they were already injured previously. There was no need for them to contribute any further. When Lu Yi arrived, the island of Versatility was already in deep trouble. The defensive formation had been destroyed, allowing the cultivators of the Formless Palace to invade the island of Versatility and wreak havoc. The Formless Palace had long heard of the infamous island of Versatility. Therefore, their first target was the island of Versatility. The other top-tier spiritual islands were secondary targets. To them, the invasion would be considered a success if they could rob the island of Versatility. After all, the wealth accumulated here was unimaginable. The defensive formation of the island of Versatility had a long history. It could be said to be the sturdiest formation on the island of Versatility. Even so, it could not withstand the attacks of the cultivators of the Formless Palace. After all, there were a few Rizhao cultivators attacking the island of Versatility. The extremely rich island of Versatility was the first to be robbed. The shops were not spared either. Those who resisted were killed without mercy. After Mo Wenli escaped from the battle with Ma Bin, he immediately rushed back to the island of Versatility to take charge of the defense. Unfortunately, he was alone and could only watch as the defensive formation of the island of Versatility was destroyed. If it were not for Mu Qing's timely help at the crucial moment, he would most likely be dead. After Mu Qing saved Mo Wenli in a hurry, the two of them made a prompt decision to escape. As a result, the entire island of Versatility fell into the hands of the Formless Palace, with no chance of resistance. Meanwhile, on the island of Versatility, the 3rd Palace Lord of the Formless Palace, Shang Qingyue, and the 4th Palace Lord, Zhu Ren, stood side by side. Shang Qingyu was from the feather race. He had a pair of snow-white wings on his back. He was tall and handsome. His noble temperament and unique appearance made him look like an immortal. Zhu Ren seemed to be from the Shadow Clan. His entire body was a mass of shadow, and his true appearance could not be seen clearly. Moreover, even this mass of shadow was constantly twisting its shape. No one knew whether it was a man or a woman. Even the name Zhu Ren was not real. It was just a code name. Tian Yen, Zhu Zhua, and Kuei Shan have all fallen, Shang Qingyu suddenly said. How could this be? Zhu Ren was a little stunned. His voice was high and low, making people uncomfortable to listen to. As he said this, he quickly took out the note to check. He found that the 3 Rikashi mentioned by Shang Qingyu were indeed uncontactable. Even the note imprint had dissipated. This undoubtedly showed that the 3 Rikashi were indeed dead. Zhu Ren was puzzled. The Wanxiang Sea is already in a state of chaos. The few sunshine protectors are either dead or injured. There is nothing they can do. Who could have killed Tianyan and the rest? Suddenly he thought of someone. What about the Saiyan Demon King, Ma Bin? Only someone as strong as the Saiyan Demon King, Ma Bin, could kill Rikashi so quickly. The reason why they dared to invade the Wanxiang Sea so recklessly was because they sensed the chaos in the Wanxiang Sea through the portal. This gave them an opportunity to take advantage of it. If the Wanxiang Sea did not have those changes today, they would not have done this. Shang Qingyu shook his head. It's not Ma Bin. Ma Bin left after chasing after a demon. If it's not Ma Bin, who could it be? Shang Qingyu raised his head and looked into the distance. It seems that we have underestimated the strength of the Wanxiang galaxy. Their reaction is also very fast. Zhu Ren followed his gaze and faintly sensed something. He nodded slightly. We should also speed up on our side. With their overall strength, even if the 3 Rikashi had fallen, they would not be afraid of the Wanxiang galaxy. However, this time, the situation was a little too big. If they continued to delay, the Rikashi from the Wanxiang galaxy would not be the only one who would come. The other galaxies that had connections with the insect path might also send Rikashi over. At that time, even if they still had 7 or 8 Rikashi, it would be difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. The main goal of this invasion of the Wanxiang Sea was to plunder resources. As long as this goal was achieved, the mission would be considered complete. Send a message to gather. Shang Qingyu spoke. It's time to leave. It was much shorter than expected. Originally, he thought that they would have at least half a day to plunder around, but now they could not wait that long. Fortunately, they had taken down the island of versatility. Zhu Ren's figure flashed and suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, a series of messages were sent out. On the various top-grade spiritual islands, the formless palace cultivators who were wreaking havoc everywhere quickly rushed towards the island of versatility. Lu Yi was flying towards the island of versatility when he suddenly sensed something. He turned his head and looked in a certain direction. The next moment he raised his eyebrows. Not bad. In that direction, he sensed the aura of several Rikashi rapidly approaching the Wanxiang Sea. And coming from that direction, they should all be Rikashi from the Wanxiang galaxy. They obviously knew about the changes here and hurried over to help. After being in the Wanxiang Sea for so many years, Lu Yi naturally had a rough understanding of the local galaxy's resources. In the early years, the Wanxiang galaxy claimed to have 11 Rikashi. This number was actually not small. After all, the total number of Rikashi in the 4 galaxies was not that many. However, after Ma Bin killed one of them, there were only 10 left. 5 of them guarded the Wanxiang Sea, while the other 5 stayed in their respective realms. Jiao Yan was one of them. Other than Jiao Yan, there were 4 others. What Lu Yi sensed at this moment was the aura of 4 Rikashi. This undoubtedly meant that the changes in the Wanxiang Sea today had caused the remaining Rikashi to come out in full force. Of course, Lu Yi did not know if there were more Rikashi hiding in the local galaxy. After all, this was a secret of the Wanxiang galaxy. It was not something that an outsider like him could understand. 4 Rikashi. If he added Mo Wen Li and Mu Qing who were lucky enough to survive, that would make a total of 6 people. It was a decent force. Lu Ye's thoughts turned and he slowed down. He had originally planned to go directly to the island of versatility. However, since the Wanxiang galaxy's local Rikashi had moved out together, he would let them meet the formless palace first. It would not be too late for him to act according to the circumstances. After he made up his mind, his expression became relaxed. He turned to look at Hua Xi beside him. Sensing his gaze, Hua Xi looked at him with her beautiful eyes. What's wrong? Lu Yi felt a headache coming on. Stop fooling around. When he saw Hua Xi again this time, it was as if she had changed into a different person. She even said that she did not know him. After spending half a day together, Lu Yi could feel that she was extremely unfamiliar with him. However, Lu Yi had a feeling that this was not true. Hua Xi was just teasing him. She had always been like this. Hearing him say this, Hua Xi was silent for a moment. Then she said, "What was I like before? What was our relationship? Why didn't I reject your contact? Also, you gave me a strong sense of familiarity." Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, "You used to be very obedient and docile. You listened to everything I said. You did whatever I said and did whatever I asked you to do." Hua Xi blinked and looked at him doubtfully. "Is that true?" "Absolutely." Lu Ye's expression was serious. "As for our relationship, what do you think it is?" "I don't know. We should be very close, right?" "Of course we're very close." Lu Yi nodded heavily. "I'm your only indispensable relative in this world. Even if heaven and earth are destroyed and heaven and earth are turned upside down, you and I will not be separated." Hua Xi lowered her head and fell into deep thought. Suddenly, she came to a realization. "I understand. You're my brother." Lu Yi looked at her from the corner of his eyes. The corner of his eyes twitched. He suddenly lost the intention to brainwash her. "Play however you want." He collected his thoughts and looked towards the island of versatility. There was still some distance and he could not see the situation there. However, he could sense that Nicho's aura was chaotic. There were already at least 10 Nichos gathered there. It seemed that Nicho from the Myriad Galaxy had already clashed with the people from the Formless Palace. This time, it would probably be like lightning striking the earth. Nicho from the Myriad Galaxy had been in charge of the Myriad Galaxy for so many years. He had never suffered such a big loss. Naturally, he could not tolerate the invasion of the Formless Palace. Therefore, no matter what, they had to do something. Otherwise, where would their dignity be in the future? As for the Formless Palace, since they had already invaded, they would not be afraid of the Myriad Galaxy. Lu Yi could only wonder. The people from the Formless Palace had come through the portal. How were they going to retreat? They could not possibly use the insect path. If they did, there would definitely be a large number of Nichos chasing after them. He restrained his aura and activated the spirit inscriptions to conceal his and Hua Xi's existence. He quietly approached the Myriad Galaxy. Before he even reached the place, a conflict had already broken out. It was extremely intense. However, the conflict did not last for too long. It soon calmed down. No one knew what was going on. After a while, Lu Yi finally arrived at a reef island near the island of versatility. There were many scattered cultivators gathered here. Many of them looked miserable. Lu Yi found a place to land with Hua Xi. He looked around and saw Tao Wu's figure. Tao Wu was undoubtedly injured. There were many cultivators gathered around him. Most of them were from the Stone Clan. They should be the people he brought from the Rainbow Island. Lu Yi hurried forward. After meeting Tao Wu, he learned about his encounter. He had previously called for the cultivators from the Rainbow Island to follow him to the island of versatility. However, before he arrived, he heard that the island of versatility was under attack. The protective formation was on the verge of collapse. Now, he did not need to go to the island of versatility. It was not peaceful there. Since he could not go to the island of versatility, Tao Wu did not know where to go. Along the way, he encountered a group of cultivators from the Formless Palace and fought. Fortunately, there were not many casualties. End of chapter. Chapter 1993. Just as Tao Wu led his men to fight the cultivators of Formless Palace, their opponents seemed to have received some kind of order and abandoned them, converging towards the island of versatility. Immediately after, the 6 Rikhas of the Wanxiang Galaxy arrived and fought with the Rikhas of Formless Palace for a while. Formless Palace should be retreating. Tao Wu pointed in the direction of the island of versatility as he spoke. I wonder what they're setting up now. Lu Yi looked in the direction of his finger and indeed saw a large number of Formless Palace cultivators gathered in a certain area of the island of versatility. Among them, there were even 2 Rikhas who were busy. At that location, an altar-like structure was rapidly being built. The altar was in the middle, forming the shape of a door. Lu Yi was still wondering how the formless palace people were going to retreat. Now that he saw this scene, he immediately understood. That's right, since Formless Palace had the means to use Yaya's aura to open a super long-distance teleportation portal for the source point, then they naturally had the ability to set up a teleportation portal. However, such a bizarre method was a little unimaginable. Lu Yi guessed that the other party had most likely used some kind of special treasure, or else it would not make sense for them to do such a thing. On the island of Versatility, a large number of Formless Palace cultivators were busy, with 2 Rick-has guarding them. Outside the island of Versatility, there were 6 figures on both sides of the Formless Palace and the local galaxy facing each other. Lu Yi saw Mu Qing and Mo Wenli in the local galaxy's camp. As for the remaining 4, he did not recognize them. After all, he had never seen them before. The white-haired old man in the lead is called Yuan Sei, from the Yuan realm. Tao Wu's voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Yuan Sei? Lu Yi was curious. What's this guy's relationship with Yuan Du? The two must be related. After all, they had the same surname and were both from the Yuan realm. Tao Wu's background was much better than Lu Ye's. The 5-color domain was also one of the top domains, so he seemed to know more about the Wanxiang galaxy than Lu Yi. His sudden mention of this to Lu Yi was obviously a subtle reminder. After all, everyone on the island of Versatility knew about the conflict between Lu Yi and Yuan Du. It said that Yuan Sei is Yuan Du's uncle and also his master. Yuan Du could be said to have been taught by Yuan Sei. Lu Yi nodded slightly and remembered this matter in his heart. Yuan Du had died at his hands. Although no one had seen the sea of blood at the time, this matter could not be hidden no matter what. Moreover, Gu Shi and Chen Xuanba were also involved. Since Yuan Sei and Yuan Du had a close relationship, Lu Yi naturally had to take note of them. Who are the others? Lu Yi asked. As for the other 3, that delicate-looking woman should be Le Qingqing from the High Heavens continent, just like Chen Xuanba. The one holding Mu Qing's hand should be her cultivation partner, Zhou Yi. He's not from the Vientiane galaxy, but because of his relationship with Mu Qing, he settled down in the Kunyu realm many years ago. As for the last one, he should be Yen Gai from the Tianyan realm. There were 6 realms in the island of Versatility galaxy. They were the Yuan realm, Tianyan realm, Kunyu realm, Illusion God realm, High Sky continent, and Che Ling realm. It was not that these were the only 6 realms in the galaxy. Instead, Rizhao was born in all 6 realms. Previously, except for Jiao Yan's Che Ling realm, almost every realm had 2 Rizhao. But now Jiao Yan was not here. Only 6 Rizhao were gathered here. The 6 of them were imposing, but the other 6 were not weak either. In fact, they were even stronger. Also, the Formless Palace had 2 extra Rizhao on the island of Versatility. This situation made Yuan Sei and the others very uncomfortable. The island of Versatility Sea had not changed in tens of thousands of years. They rushed here when they heard the news. Naturally, they could see that the Formless Palace was planning to evacuate. The entire island of Versatility was a mess. Apart from the island of Versatility, several top-grade spiritual islands and even dozens of high-grade spiritual islands had been ransacked. Countless cultivators had been killed by the Formless Palace. Now that the Formless Palace wanted to evacuate, the island of Versatility could not just stand by and watch. If the Formless Palace really evacuated safely, the island of Versatility Sea would no longer be under their control. If they could not even protect the lives and wealth of foreign cultivators, what right did they have to control the island of Versatility Sea? However, the Formless Palace was powerful. Although the 6 Rizhao were not few in number, they might not be a match for the Formless Palace. Moreover, at this very moment, countless cultivators were looking at the island of Versatility Sea. If they did not handle this well, the galaxy's reputation would be ruined. On the island of Versatility, the Formless Palace's altar was getting more and more complete. They might be able to use it soon. Yuan Sei knew that he could not delay any longer. He sighed softly and took a step forward. Shang Qingyu, do you dare to have a bet with me? Shang Qingyu had a faint smile on his face. He replied calmly, how do you want to bet? What are we betting on? If the 6 Rizhao came to stop them regardless of the consequences, it would be troublesome for them to evacuate. However, from Yuan Sei's words, he seemed to have a plan. Shang Qingyu could vaguely see through his intentions. It was exactly what he was thinking. One side wanted to leave, while the other wanted to stay. However, neither side was willing to engage in an all-out battle. Since that was the case, the two leaders would fight it out to see who was stronger and who was weaker before coming to a conclusion. Yuan Sei said, "We'll bet on the lives of the cultivators under the Formless Palace's Rizhao. If you win, just take them and leave. I won't stop you. If you lose, what will happen?" Shang Qingyu raised his eyebrows. Yuan Sei's eyes flashed. "Today, the island of versatility will be bathed in blood." His request did not include the Rizhao of the Formless Palace. Even if he really won, he would not let the Rizhao of the Formless Palace be obedient. However, it was different under the Rizhao. If he could defeat Shang Qingyu, the Rizhao of the Formless Palace would be wary of him. By then, he could leave a large number of Formless Palace cultivators behind to account for the suffering of the spiritual islands. "Sure." Shang Qingyu looked nonchalant. His expression was relaxed as if he did not care about Yuan Sei at all. "Then I'll make a bet with you." When he finished speaking, he had already charged towards Yuan Sei. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Behind Yuan Sei, the 5 Vientiane Rizhao were shocked. On the other hand, Yuan Sei seemed to have expected this and did not panic at all. As a member of the feather race, Shang Qingyu was extremely fast. Before he even reached Yuan Sei, the wings on his back flapped. Streaks of white light covered Yuan Sei like lightning. Yuan Sei did not move. He reached out his hand and something appeared in his hand. In the distance, Lu Yi observed with rapt attention. At this time, his eyes couldn't help but light up as he warned Yuan Sei's hand without blinking. At this moment, a treasure that looked like a gourd appeared in Yuan Sei's hand. It had an antique look and was filled with complicated patterns. It looked extraordinary. A treasure gourd. Lu Yi immediately recognized the nature of this item. This was the Vine of Fortune's attribute treasure. It came from the same source as his sword gourd and elixir gourd. As far as he knew, there was a wind gourd in a certain realm. It was the treasure of that realm. However, he had never seen it before. He did not expect to see a treasure gourd in Yuan Sei's hand on the Vientiane Sea. What was the special property of this gourd? What was its power? He could not help but think of something. When he was in the Azura field, he had placed his sword gourd on a high platform. Then, he received some information from the Azura field. According to the information, there were a total of 7 attribute treasures on the Vine of Fortune. If he could gather all 7 gourds, he would be able to discover the secret of creation. He did not know what the secret of creation was, but it was definitely extraordinary. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, Yuan Sei suddenly shouted, "Burn!" The gourd suddenly emitted a bright red light. It seemed to have become extremely hot. Even the area where Yuan Sei was distorted by the high temperature. In the next instant, a streak of fire flew out of the gourd. The fire was not fierce or big. It was like a small fire snake. However, when this small fire snake appeared, Lu Yi suddenly felt an abnormal reaction from his talent tree. He was slightly startled. He quickly sensed it and felt a desire from his talent tree. This made his expression a little strange. Speaking of which, when he was very weak, his talent tree did react to some fire attribute treasures. However, as his strength increased, his talent tree kept changing. This situation never happened again. Until today, Lu Yi immediately understood that the fire snake released by Yuan Sei's treasure gourd was very useful to his talent tree. There was no reaction in the past because the fire attribute treasures he devoured were not of high quality. However, the fire snake that flew out of the treasure gourd was obviously different. This made Lu Ye's mind active. Now, it seemed that Yuan Sei dared to propose a duel with Shang Qingyu because of this fire gourd. Moreover, it was a killing move. Yuan Sei did not have any intention of probing at all. This showed Yuan Sei's eagerness and his trust in this treasure. The small fire snake slithered. Its speed was not fast, but the white light that Shang Qingyu shot out earlier seemed to have melted instantly. The figure that was charging towards Yuan Sei suddenly changed direction as he exclaimed, "It's a treasure!" Shang Xingyu obviously noticed that the small fire snake was not ordinary. He did not dare to face it head-on. Instead, he moved his body and kept dodging. However, no matter how he dodged, he could not get rid of the small fire snake's pursuit. There were even a few times when the situation was extremely dangerous. Yuan Sei held the fire gourd in one hand and made a hand seal with the other. He stared at Shang Xingyu's figure and his divine sense surged wildly. The wind gourd could become a world-suppressing treasure. Naturally, the fire gourd in his hand was not inferior. This was also the most powerful treasure in the entire Wanxiang galaxy. When he learned that Formless Palace was coming, he brought this treasure with him without any hesitation. He then invited Shang Xingyu to a duel. He wanted to use this treasure to kill Shang Xingyu first. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.